The first thing I noticed wasn't the beeping machines or the IV in my arm. It was my phone, face down on the hospital bedside table, practically vibrating itself off the edge with notifications. 2 weeks of messages, the nurse told me. 2 weeks since the semi ran the red light and T-boned my Civic. 2 weeks of medically induced coma while my brain swelling went down. 2 weeks for my family to show their true colors. My hands shook as I scrolled through the texts. Most were from friends, coworkers, my boss checking in. But it was my brother Dylan's messages that made my blood run cold. Day 3. Hey sis, using your apartment to crash closer to work. Hope that's cool. Day 5. Your couch is way better than mine. Mind if I swap them? Day 8. Thanks for the apartment. Mom said you'd want me to have it. Day 11. Sold your bedroom set. Hospital bills are expensive. Figured you'd need the cash. Day 14. My stuff's all moved in now. When you get out, Mom's setting up the basement for you. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The basement. My mother's moldy, unfinished basement where she stored Christmas decorations and Dad's old golf clubs. That's where they planned to put me after stealing my apartment. Natally, Dr. Martinez entered with a warm smile. So good to see you awake. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, I croaked, then managed a weak smile. Because I did. She laughed softly. Your sense of humor survived intact. That's excellent. Now let's discuss your recovery. But I was only half listening. My mind raced through the implications. My apartment, my beautiful apartment in Lincoln Park that I'd saved 5 years to afford the down payment on. The exposed brick walls, the vintage hardwood floors, the clawfoot tub I'd refinish myself. Dylan had always made snide comments about how it was too nice for a single woman, how I was showing off by living alone in such a good neighborhood. And Mom, God, my mother, who'd spent my entire childhood telling people Dylan was the smart one while I was pretty enough to marry well, who'd pushed me to give him my car in high school because boys need independence, who'd suggested I co-sign his student loans because family helps family. The same mom who apparently decided I wouldn't need my own home anymore. Because what? Coma patients don't require dignity. Discharge in about a week, Dr. Martinez was saying. You'll need physical therapy, but your cognitive functions seem perfectly intact. You're very lucky. Lucky, right. After she left, I called my best friend Emma. She answered on the first ring. Nat? Oh my God, you're awake. I've been so worried. Emma, I need you to do something for me. Go to my apartment. Check if Dylan's actually there. What? Why would Dylan? She paused. Oh no, what did they do? 20 minutes later, she called back. I could hear traffic in the background. I'm outside your building. There's a moving truck. Nat, they're taking your kitchen table out right now. The one you refinished last summer. Is Dylan there? Yeah, he's directing the movers. Want me to confront him? No. Just watch. Document everything if you can. On it. I hung up and opened my laptop, grateful I'd had it with me during the accident. My hands trembled as I logged into my security system. I'd installed cameras after a break-in scare last year. Nothing fancy, just basic coverage of the entry points and main living spaces. Dylan knew about them, but apparently thought they were as unconscious as I'd been. The footage loaded, and I watched my life being dismantled in time-lapse. Day 1, Mom entering with my spare key, walking through the apartment like she was appraising it. Opening closets, checking the water pressure, testing the appliances. Day 2, Dylan arriving with a suitcase, Mom handing him keys. Keys she must have had copied. Day 3, the two of them going through my closet, Mom holding up dresses and saying something that made Dylan laugh. Based on the dress she was holding, my interview outfit, I could guess the punchline. Day 5, Dylan and 2 buddies swapping my leather couch for his ratty futon. They struggled with the doorway, scratching my walls in the process. Day 7, Mom directing a different set of movers as they packed up my books, my art, my grandmother's china. I watched her wrap my things with the same care she'd shown when packing up my dorm room. Which is to say, none. Day 9, Dylan hosting a party. Beer bottles on my handmade coffee table. Some girl throwing up in my bathroom. His friends playing darts on my wall. My actual wall, not a dartboard. Day 12, a stranger touring the apartment with Dylan. Money changing hands. My bedroom furniture being disassembled. Day 14, Dylan hanging his neon beer signs where my photography had been. The apartment I carefully curated turned into a fraternity house. But here's the thing about my security system. It backed up to the cloud. Every minute of footage, saved and timestamped. Evidence. I called my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer, hired after the accident to deal with insurance. Margaret Winters was 65, sharp as a surgical knife, and took absolutely zero shit from anyone. They did what? Her voice could have frozen hellfire. Please tell me you have documentation. 14 days of security footage. Christmas came early. Send me everything. And Natalie, don't contact them yet. Let them think you're still foggy from the coma. The next 3 days were torture. Emma kept me updated while I played confused patient for the steady stream of doctors and nurses. Mom visited once, bringing grocery store flowers and a performance worthy of community theater. Oh, sweetheart, she cooed, smoothing my hair. You gave us such a scare. Don't worry about anything, okay? Dylan and I have handled everything. You just focus on getting better. My apartment, I mumbled, playing groggy. Don't worry about that. We've taken care of it. You'll be so comfortable in the basement once it's fixed up. Dylan even said he'd help paint it whatever color you want. How generous. My brother would help paint my mother's basement after stealing my home. The doctors say you might be confused for a while, she continued. Head injuries can affect memory. You might not remember things correctly. Ah, there it was. The gaslighting groundwork. If I protested, I was brain damaged. If I complained, I was confused. If I fought back, I clearly needed more help than they thought. Tired? I whispered, closing my eyes. She patted my hand. Of course, dear. Oh, I almost forgot. Dylan wanted me to ask, do you remember where you put your passport? He's planning a trip and thought he might use your airline miles since he won't be traveling anytime soon. The audacity was breathtaking. I kept my eyes closed, feigning sleep, while she rummaged through my hospital room belongings. Margaret worked fast. By day 4, she had everything lined up. Theft charges for the furniture, breaking and entering, turns out making unauthorized copies of keys counts. Fraud for Dylan representing himself as the apartment owner. Elder abuse charges for Mom, since technically I was in a vulnerable state when they robbed me. The security footage is damning, she told me. But I need to warn you, pressing charges will go nuclear on your family relationships. What relationships? I laughed bitterly. The one where my mother planned to stuff me in a basement while I was comatose. Or the one where my brother threw parties in my home while I was fighting for my life. Fair point. One more thing, your apartment building has security footage too. I've subpoenaed it. Thought you'd want to know that Dylan's been telling people you gave him the apartment because you were probably going to die anyway. Multiple witnesses heard him at a bar bragging about his inheritance. He thought I was dying and his first instinct was to take my home. Well, he's about to learn that rumors of your death were greatly exaggerated and extremely expensive for him. I was discharged on a Thursday. Margaret had arranged everything. Police would meet us at the apartment for the formal eviction. A locksmith would change the locks. Movers would retrieve anything of mine from Mom's storage unit. Emma picked me up, armed with coffee and righteous fury. I've documented everything. Your neighbor Mrs. Chen is devastated. She thought Dylan was house-sitting. She's been feeding your plants because she didn't trust him to remember. Mrs. Chen is a treasure. She also recorded Dylan telling someone on the phone that the vegetable wouldn't need the apartment anymore. She's happy to testify. The drive to Lincoln Park was surreal. The city looked the same. But I felt like I'd slipped into an alternate universe where family meant Target instead of safety net. We arrived to find Dylan's car in my spot. A Dylan's Pace vanity plate freshly screwed on. Because of course. Margaret met us at the entrance with 2 police officers. Ready? Worn ready. The knock on my own door was surreal. Dylan answered in his boxers, Xbox controller in hand. His face went through an impressive journey, annoyance to confusion to recognition to panic. Nat, but you're, Mom said. Not dead. Not a vegetable. Not conveniently out of the way. I stepped past him into my violated space. Beer cans everywhere. Burn marks on my coffee table. My walls, once carefully painted in subtle grays, now sporting holes from the dartboard and what looked like a punched wall. I don't understand, he stammered. Mom said you wanted me to have it. That you told her before the accident. I was in a coma, Dylan. Kind of hard to want anything when you're unconscious. The officers stepped forward. Dylan Peters, you're being served with an eviction notice. You have 1 hour to remove your personal belongings. This is insane. Nat, tell them, we're family. We were family, I corrected, until you decided I was better off dead and my apartment was better off yours. Margaret handed him the restraining order. You're also prohibited from contacting Ms. Peters or coming within 500 feet of this property. You're seriously throwing me out? Where am I supposed to go? Mom's basement is available, I suggested. She set it up so nicely for me. His face went red. This is bullshit. You're going to regret this. Mom's going to be busy with her own legal troubles, Margaret interrupted. Turns out stealing from incapacitated family members is frowned upon by the courts. The next hour was glorious chaos. Dylan tried calling Mom, but she was presumably being served her own papers. He threw whatever he could grab into garbage bags, muttering about ungrateful sisters and family betrayal. My couch? He protested as the officers blocked him from taking it. You mean my couch that you stole? I asked sweetly. The one I have receipts for. That couch. After you left, I surveyed the damage. It was extensive but fixable. What wasn't fixable was the fundamental breach of trust. While I'd been fighting to survive, my family had been dividing the spoils. My phone rang. Mom. How dare you? She shrieked. Having me arrested at my book club. Do you have any idea how humiliating? Not as humiliating as finding out your family robbed you while you were in a coma, I interrupted. We were helping. That apartment was too much for you anyway, and Dylan needed to get his own apartment, with his own money, from his own job. Family helps family. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't plan basement accommodations for accident victims. Family doesn't sell someone's belongings while they're unconscious. You're being dramatic. A basement apartment would have been perfectly adequate. I've owned a condo, Mother. I have a career, a life, a home I paid for myself. The fact that you looked at all that and saw something to give Dylan says everything about how you see me. I see an ungrateful daughter, whoa. I hung up. The legal proceedings took months. Dylan tried to fight the eviction until Margaret produced the security footage of him telling his friends I was basically dead anyway. Mom's lawyer argued that she was just trying to help until we showed the footage of her methodically cataloging my belongings for sale. They both ended up with criminal records. Dylan got probation and restitution. Mom got community service and a hefty fine. The family imploded, relatives chose sides, holiday invitations were revoked. Facebook became a war zone. I renovated the apartment, erasing every trace of Dylan's brief occupation. The walls were repaired and repainted. The hardwood floors were refinished. I bought a new couch, leather, expensive, and most importantly, mine. 6 months after waking from the coma, I hosted a housewarming party. Emma came, of course. Mrs. Chen brought homemade dumplings. Colleagues from work, friends from physical therapy, even Dr. Martinez stopped by. My chosen family, filling my reclaimed space with actual love. No family? Mrs. Chen asked gently, looking at the happy crowd. All family, I corrected, gesturing at the room. Just the kind you choose, not the kind you're stuck with. The security cameras are still there, upgraded now. Not because I'm afraid of break-ins, but because I've learned that sometimes the biggest threats come from the people who are supposed to love you most. Dylan texts occasionally, usually when he needs money. Mom sends guilt-laden birthday cards about forgiveness and moving forward. I don't respond. Some bridges, once burned by the people who were supposed to help you cross them, aren't worth rebuilding. My apartment is beautiful now. The exposed brick glows in the evening light. The vintage hardwood tells stories under bare feet. The clawfoot tub hosts long soaks after physical therapy sessions. It's everything I worked for, everything I almost lost, everything they tried to take. And in the corner, where Dylan's dartboard scored the wall, hangs a framed photo from my housewarming party. All of us laughing, champagne raised, surrounded by the people who showed up when it mattered. The family I chose. The family that waited for me to wake up instead of dividing my life like leftovers. That's the thing about security cameras. They show you who people really are when they think nobody's watching. And sometimes that's the most valuable footage of all.
The doorbell chimed, shattering the peaceful Sunday afternoon. I froze, wooden spoon in hand, a pot of simmering marinara sauce momentarily forgotten on the stove. My husband Ethan's footsteps echoed down the hallway as he went to answer. "Mom," I heard him say, surprise coloring his voice. "What are you doing here?" My stomach clenched. Mary. My mother-in-law's unexpected visits never boded well. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped into the living room, plastering on a smile. "Mary, what a lovely surprise," I said, hoping my voice didn't betray my unease. Mary stood in the doorway, her perfectly coiffed silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. Her eyes, sharp as ever, darted around the room before settling on me. "Ava, dear," she said, her tone saccharine, "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," Ethan said, ushering her inside. "We were just about to have dinner. Would you like to join us?" I shot him a look, but he missed it, focused on helping his mother remove her coat. "Oh, I wouldn't want to impose," Mary said, even as she settled herself on our sofa. "I just needed to speak with you both about something important." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "Is everything all right?" I asked, perching on the arm of Ethan's chair. "Is it Henry? Is he okay?" Mary's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw genuine pain in her eyes. "It's your father," she said, turning to Ethan. "The doctor called this morning. His condition, it's worse than we thought." Ethan leaned forward, his face etched with concern. "What do you mean, Mom? What did the doctor say?" I reached out and squeezed his shoulder, my heart aching for him. Henry had been battling Parkinson's for years, but lately his decline had been more rapid. Mary dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "He needs more care than I can provide at home. The doctor, he's recommending a nursing facility." "A nursing home?" Ethan's voice cracked. "But Dad always said he wanted to stay at home." "I know, dear," Mary said, reaching out to pat his knee, "but we have to think about what's best for him now. The facility the doctor recommended is excellent, but—" I knew what was coming before she said it. "It's expensive," Mary finished, her eyes now fixed on me. "Very expensive." The room fell silent, save for the distant bubbling of my neglected marinara sauce. I could feel the weight of Mary's gaze, the unspoken expectation hanging in the air. Ethan cleared his throat. "How much are we talking about, Mom?" Mary named a figure that made my breath catch. "It was more than double our mortgage payment." "We'll find a way," Ethan said immediately, ever the dutiful son. "Won't we, Ava?" I nodded, even as my mind raced through our finances. We had some savings, but not nearly enough to cover this kind of expense long term. "Of course," I said. "We'll do whatever it takes to make sure Henry gets the best care." Mary's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I knew I could count on you both." "You're such a blessing, Ava. I don't know what we'd do without you." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was about Henry, about family. Whatever it took, we'd make it work. As Mary launched into details about the facility, I excused myself to check on dinner. In the kitchen, I stirred the sauce mechanically, my mind whirling. How were we going to afford this? What sacrifices would we need to make? The sound of breaking glass startled me from my thoughts. I rushed back to the living room to find Mary standing over the shattered remains of my favorite vase, a gift from my late mother. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "How clumsy of me." As I knelt to clean up the pieces, a shard nicked my finger. A drop of blood welled up bright red against my skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was an omen of things to come. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., jolting me awake. I groaned, my hand fumbling to silence it. Beside me, Ethan stirred but didn't wake. I envied his ability to sleep through anything. As I stumbled to the bathroom, the weight of our new reality settled on my shoulders. It had been 2 weeks since Mary's bombshell about Henry's care, and our lives had been turned upside down. The nursing facility costs were astronomical, and our savings were dwindling fast. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, noting the dark circles under my eyes. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. Today was my first day back at work after 7 years as a homemaker. The thought made my stomach churn with anxiety. By the time Ethan woke up, I was dressed in my new business attire, a far cry from my usual comfortable clothes. He blinked at me, confusion clouding his face for a moment before realization dawned. "Ava, you don't have to do this," he said, his voice still husky with sleep. "We can figure something else out." I forced a smile. "We've been over this, Ethan. It's the best solution. Besides, it'll be good for me to get back out there." He pulled me into a hug, and I breathed in his familiar scent, drawing strength from his embrace. "You're amazing, you know that?" he murmured into my hair. As I drove to my new job at a local real estate office, my phone buzzed. Mary's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. "Ava, dear?" Mary's syrupy voice filled the car. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "I'm on my way to work, Mary. Is everything okay?" "Oh, yes, everything's fine. I just wanted to check if you'd sent this month's payment for Henry's care. The facility called, and I wouldn't want there to be any misunderstandings." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I transferred the money to your account last week, Mary, just like we agreed." "Did you? Oh, I must have overlooked it. I'll check again. Drive safely, dear." The call ended, leaving me with a knot in my stomach. Something about Mary's tone didn't sit right with me. At the office, I threw myself into learning my new role, grateful for the distraction. My coworkers were kind, if a bit curious about the new middle-aged recruit. By lunchtime, I was exhausted but feeling more confident. As I unwrapped my sandwich in the break room, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. "Hey, how's your first day going?" he asked. "It's going," I replied, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. "How are you doing?" There was a pause. "I just got off the phone with the nursing facility. They said they haven't received our payment yet." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. I transferred the money to your mom last week." "I know. I told them that. They said they'll look into it, but Ava, I'm worried. This isn't like Mom to forget something so important." I bit my lip, Mary's earlier call suddenly taking on a sinister tone. "Ethan, I think we need to talk to your mother. Something doesn't feel right." "What do you mean?" His voice sharpened. "Ava, if you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," I cut him off. "I just think we need to get to the bottom of this. Can you call her? See if she can meet us for dinner tonight?" He agreed, albeit reluctantly. As I hung up, my new boss, Sandra, poked her head into the break room. "Everything okay, Ava? You look a bit pale." I forced a smile. "Just some family stuff, nothing to worry about." But as I returned to my desk, worry gnawed at me. What if the money hadn't gone through? What if Mary had? No, I couldn't think like that. She was Ethan's mother, for heaven's sake. As the day wore on, my unease grew. By the time I left the office, my nerves were frayed. I dreaded the conversation ahead, but I knew we needed answers. Pulling into our driveway, I saw Mary's car already parked outside. My heart raced as I walked to the front door, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Little did I know, this dinner would be the beginning of a nightmare that would test the very foundations of our family. I sat across from Mary at our dining table, my fingers drumming nervously on the polished wood. Ethan paced behind me, his agitation palpable in the tense atmosphere. "Mom," Ethan began, his voice strained, "we need to talk about the nursing home payments." Mary's face remained impassive, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass. "What about them, dear?" I leaned forward, my eyes locked on Mary's. "The facility called. They haven't received the money for this month." A flicker of something, surprise, guilt, crossed Mary's face before her usual mask of calm settled back into place. "Oh, there must be some mistake. I'm sure I took care of it." Ethan stopped pacing and placed his hands on the back of my chair. "Mom, Ava transferred the money to your account last week. We have the bank statement to prove it." Mary waved her hand dismissively. "Well, you know how these things can be. Banks make mistakes all the time." My patience snapped. "Mary, this isn't a bank error. The money left our account and went into yours. What happened after that?" Her eyes narrowed, a hint of steel entering her voice. "Are you accusing me of something, Ava?" Before I could respond, Ethan intervened. "No one's accusing anyone, Mom. We just need to figure out what happened to the money." Mary's demeanor suddenly shifted, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner." My heart raced as I braced myself for what was coming. "I had to use the money for an emergency," Mary said, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "Your cousin Sarah? You remember her, don't you? She called me in tears. Her husband left her and she was about to lose her house. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Ethan's grip on my chair tightened. "Mom, that money was for Dad's care." "How could you?" I know," Mary interrupted, her voice quavering. "I was going to pay it back, I swear. I just needed a little more time." I felt a surge of anger. Mary, why didn't you tell us? We could have figured something out together. She turned her teary gaze on me. I didn't want to burden you both. You've already done so much. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. Mom, we need to fix this. The nursing home needs to be paid. Mary nodded, composing herself. Of course, dear. I'll take care of it first thing in the morning. I have some savings I can use. As she spoke, a thought niggled at the back of my mind. Something about this didn't add up. Mary, I said slowly, how did you transfer the money to Sarah so quickly? Bank transfers usually take a few days to process. Her eyes widened slightly, and I knew I'd caught her in a lie. Oh, well, I wired it to her. It was faster that way. Ethan looked between us, confusion clear on his face. Mom, what's going on? Mary's facade cracked just for a moment, and I saw a flash of calculation in her eyes. Then she burst into fresh tears. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. I have a problem. What kind of problem? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Gambling, Mary choked out. I've been trying to stop, but I thought if I could just win big once, I could pay for your father's care and you wouldn't have to worry anymore. The room fell silent, the weight of Mary's confession hanging heavy in the air. Ethan looked shell-shocked, while I felt a mix of anger and pity swirling in my chest. We need to see your bank statements, I said firmly. All of them. We need to know exactly how much money is missing. Mary nodded meekly, all fight gone from her. Of course, I'll bring them over tomorrow. As she gathered her things to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only scratching the surface of Mary's deception. The road ahead looked rocky, and I wondered how our family would weather this storm. Ethan walked his mother to the door, their hushed conversation drifting back to me. As the door closed, he turned to me, his face a mask of pain and confusion. What are we going to do, Ava? He asked, his voice breaking. I stood and wrapped my arms around him, my mind already racing with possibilities. We'll figure it out, I promised, together. But as I held my husband, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets Mary might be hiding, and how deep this rabbit hole truly went. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., and I groaned, my body aching from another restless night. It had been 2 weeks since Mary's confession, and the weight of our new reality pressed down on me like a physical force. I dragged myself out of bed, careful not to wake Ethan. He'd been working late, trying to secure a promotion to help cover his father's care. The guilt of my new job adding to his stress gnawed at me. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee and checked my phone. A text from Sandra, my boss, lit up the screen. Big client meeting today. Don't be late. I sighed, downing my coffee. The pressure to perform at work while managing our family crisis was overwhelming. As I rushed to get ready, Ethan stirred. Ava? He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Go back to sleep, honey, I whispered, kissing his forehead. I've got an early meeting. His eyes flickered open, concern etched on his face. Did you hear from Mom? I shook my head. Mary had been avoiding our calls since her confession, claiming she needed time to gather her financial records. Each day of silence only deepened my suspicions. I'll try her again today, I promised, though the words felt hollow. The drive to work was a blur of anxiety and half-formed plans. How were we going to dig ourselves out of this mess? At the office, I threw myself into preparation for the client meeting. Maybe if I could land this account, the extra commission would help ease our financial burden. Midway through my presentation, my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on the potential client's questions. When we finally broke for lunch, I checked my messages. 5 missed calls from Ethan, and a text that made my blood run cold. Dad's being discharged. Nursing home says we're behind on payments. Call me ASAP. My hands shaking, I ducked into an empty conference room and called Ethan. Ava, thank God, he answered, his voice strained. They're threatening to send Dad home today if we don't pay up. But that's impossible, I sputtered. We gave Mary the money for this month's payment just last week. Ethan's bitter laugh cut through the line. Yeah, well, it seems Mom's gambling problem is worse than we thought. I went to her house this morning. She's gone, Ava, packed up and left. The room spun around me. Gone? What do you mean, gone? I mean, she's vanished. Neighbors said they saw her leave with suitcases last night. Her phone's disconnected. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. Oh, Ethan. I'm so sorry. What are we going to do? He sighed heavily. I don't know. The nursing home needs $5,000 by end of day, or they're sending Dad home. We can't take care of him ourselves, Ava. He needs round-the-clock care. The enormity of our situation crashed over me. We'd emptied our savings account for last month's payment, believing Mary would handle this month. Now we were broke, with no way to care for Henry. "I'll figure something out," I said, my mind already racing. Just try to stall them. I'll be home as soon as I can." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the conference room window. The woman looking back at me seemed older, more determined than the person I'd been just weeks ago. A knock at the door startled me. Sandra poked her head in. "Ava, the clients are back. They're ready to sign." I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. "Sandra, I need a favor." "A big one." Her eyebrows rose. "What kind of favor?" "I need an advance on my commission. A big one, and I need it today." Sandra's expression softened. "Ava, what's going on?" In that moment, I made a decision. No more secrets, no more trying to handle everything alone. I told Sandra everything about Henry, about Mary's deception, about our desperate situation. When I finished, Sandra was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, let's go close this deal. Then we'll talk about that advance." As I followed her back to the meeting room, a plan began to form in my mind. We'd get through this somehow. And when we did, Mary would have a lot to answer for. I squared my shoulders and plastered on a smile. It was time to fight for my family. The sterile smell of the nursing home assaulted my senses as Ethan and I walked down the corridor to Henry's room. It had been a month since Mary's disappearance, and the strain was showing on both of us. Dark circles shadowed Ethan's eyes, matching my own. "Ready?" I asked, squeezing Ethan's hand. He nodded grimly, pushing open the door. Henry sat in his wheelchair by the window, his once robust frame now frail and hunched. His eyes lit up when he saw us, a spark of recognition that both warmed and broke my heart. "There's my boy," Henry said, his voice weak but filled with affection. "And Ava, pretty as a picture." I leaned down to kiss his cheek, noting how papery his skin felt. "How are you feeling today, Henry?" He waved a trembling hand. "Oh, same old, same old. Where's Mary? She usually comes with you." Ethan and I exchanged a glance. We decided not to tell Henry about Mary's betrayal, fearing the shock would be too much for his fragile health. "Mom's not feeling well today," Ethan lied smoothly. "She sends her love." Henry nodded, seemingly satisfied. As Ethan wheeled him out to the garden for some fresh air, I hung back, cornering Henry's nurse. "How's he really doing?" I asked in a low voice. The nurse, Sarah, hesitated. "He has good days and bad days. But honestly, Mrs. Thompson, we're concerned about his rapid decline. Has he been under any unusual stress lately?" I bit my lip, guilt gnawing at me. "Not that we know of. Why?" Sarah lowered her voice. "It's just, well, Mrs. Thompson Sr. was here last week. They had quite a heated discussion. Mr. Thompson was very agitated afterward." My blood ran cold. "Mary was here? When?" "Last Tuesday. I assumed you knew." I forced a smile. "Of course. Thank you, Sarah." My mind raced as I joined Ethan and Henry in the garden. Mary had been here, despite telling us she was out of state sorting things out. What game was she playing? As we said our goodbyes, Henry grasped my hand. "Ava, dear, could you do me a favor?" "Anything, Henry." His roomy eyes met mine, suddenly sharp. "Check the safe in my old study. The combination is your wedding date. There's something there you and Ethan need to see." Before I could question him further, a coughing fit overtook him. By the time the nurses had him settled, he'd drifted off to sleep. On the drive home, I filled Ethan in on what I'd learned. "I can't believe she came here," Ethan fumed, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "What was she thinking?" "I don't know." I said, "But I think we need to check that safe." An hour later, we stood in Henry's musty study. The safe creaked open, revealing a stack of documents. "What is all this?" Ethan muttered, leafing through the papers. My eyes widened as I scanned a bank statement. "Ethan, look at this. It's an offshore account in your mom's name. There's over $500,000 here." Ethan snatched the paper, his face paling. "That's impossible. Where would she get this kind of money?" As we dug deeper, a sickening picture emerged. False invoices, doctored bank statements, a web of lies stretching back years. "She's been embezzling from Dad's company," Ethan whispered, horror etched on his face. "All this time." My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Mr. Thompson took a turn. Come quickly." I showed Ethan the message, our eyes meeting in shared anguish. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Ethan's jaw clenched, a determination I'd never seen before hardening his features. "We go to the police. Then we go to Dad. It's time to end this." As we rushed out the door, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. We were about to shatter what was left of our family. But as I thought of Henry, alone and declining in that sterile room, I knew we had no choice. The storm we'd been dreading was finally breaking, and we had to face it head-on. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it in the darkness, my heart racing as I saw the nursing home's number flash on the screen. "Mrs. Thompson?" The night nurse's voice was tense. "You need to come immediately. Your father-in-law has taken a turn for the worse." I shook Ethan awake, and we dressed in a frantic blur. The drive to the nursing home was a nightmare of screeching tires and red lights that seemed to last an eternity. We burst into Henry's room to find a flurry of activity. Doctors and nurses swarmed around his bed, their urgent whispers filling the air. "What's happening?" Ethan demanded, his voice cracking. A doctor turned to us, his face grave. "Mr. Thompson has suffered a severe stroke. We're doing everything we can, but—" His words faded into background noise as I watched Henry's chest rise and fall with painful effort. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? Hours crawled by as we waited for news. As dawn broke, the doctor returned, looking exhausted. "We've stabilized him," he said, "but he'll need specialized care, more than we can provide here." Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by a new wave of anxiety. "What kind of care?" I asked. "There's a facility that specializes in stroke recovery," the doctor explained. "But it's expensive, and they require payment up front." Ethan and I exchanged a look of despair. We drained our savings paying for Henry's care here. How could we possibly afford something even more expensive? "How much?" Ethan asked, his voice hollow. The figure the doctor named made my knees weak. It was more than we made in a year. "We'll figure it out," I said, squeezing Ethan's hand. "Somehow." But as we left the hospital, reality crashed down on us. We had no money, no assets to liquidate, and Mary had vanished with the embezzled funds. "Maybe we could get a loan," I suggested weakly as we entered our house. Ethan shook his head, slumping onto the couch. "With what collateral? We're already mortgaged to the hilt." I was about to respond when Ethan's phone rang. He answered, his face darkening as he listened. "What is it?" I asked as he hung up. "That was the nursing home," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "They're threatening to discharge Dad. Apparently, we're 3 months behind on payments." "What?" I gasped. "But that's impossible. We've been transferring the money to your mom's account every month." Ethan's eyes widened with sudden realization. "Mom," he growled, "she never paid them. She took the money and ran." The room spun around me as the full weight of Mary's betrayal hit home. Not only had she stolen from Henry's company, but she'd also taken the money meant for his care. "We need to go to the police," I said, reaching for my phone. "Wait," Ethan said, grabbing my wrist. His eyes bore into mine, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "Before we do that, I need to know something." My stomach clenched. "What?" "Did you know?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "About the money, about Mom's embezzlement. Did you know any of it?" I recoiled as if he'd slapped me. "How can you ask me that? Of course I didn't know." "Then why were you so suspicious of her?" he pressed. "You've been uneasy about Mom for weeks. Why?" Anger and hurt warred within me. "Because I could see what you couldn't," I shouted. "I saw how she manipulated you, how she always had an excuse for everything. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this bad." Ethan's face crumpled, the fight draining out of him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I don't know who to trust anymore." As I watched my husband break down, the man I loved reduced to a shell of himself by his mother's betrayal, something inside me hardened. This ended now. I picked up my phone again, my fingers steady as I dialed. "Hello, police? I'd like to report a crime." The police station buzzed with activity as Ethan and I sat in hard plastic chairs, waiting. My hands trembled as I clutched a manila folder filled with bank statements and the damning documents we'd found in Henry's safe. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson?" A detective approached, his face grim. "We've located your mother." Ethan stood abruptly, his voice tight. "Where is she?" "She's being brought in for questioning. We'll need you both to stay here." As if on cue, the station doors burst open. 2 officers escorted Mary in, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Her eyes locked onto us, a mixture of defiance and fear flashing across her face. "Ethan, darling," she called out, her voice sickly sweet. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding." I felt Ethan stiffen beside me. "No, Mom," he said, his voice cold. "No more lies." The detective ushered us into separate rooms for questioning. Hours passed as we recounted every detail, every suspicion, every betrayal. By the time we emerged, I felt wrung out, my emotions raw and exposed. In the hallway, we came face to face with Mary again. This time, her mask had slipped, revealing the desperation beneath. "You don't understand," she hissed, her eyes darting between us. "I did it for us, for the family." I couldn't hold back anymore. "For the family?" I spat. "You stole from your own husband, left him to suffer without proper care. How dare you claim this was for anyone but yourself?" Mary's face contorted with rage. "You," she snarled, jabbing a finger at me. "You turned my son against me. This is all your fault." Ethan stepped between us, his voice shaking with anger. "No, Mom, this is your fault. Your lies, your theft, your betrayal. It ends now." As the officers led Mary away, her shouts echoing down the hallway, my phone buzzed. It was the nursing home. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to discuss your father-in-law's situation urgently." My heart sank. In the chaos of Mary's arrest, we'd forgotten about Henry's precarious condition. "We can't keep him here without payment," the administrator said, her voice apologetic but firm. "We'll have to discharge him tomorrow." Panic clawed at my throat. "Please, we just need a little more time. We're sorting out a financial situation." "I'm sorry, but we've already extended too much credit. If you can't pay by noon tomorrow, we'll have to release him to your care." The call ended, leaving me shell-shocked. Ethan looked at me, his face ashen. "What are we going to do?" he whispered. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We fight. We've come this far. We're not giving up now." We spent the night making frantic calls, to banks, to lawyers, to anyone who might be able to help. But as dawn broke, we were no closer to a solution. Exhausted and desperate, we arrived at the nursing home. Henry was awake, his eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. "I heard you found the safe," he said, his voice weak but steady. Ethan nodded, tears in his eyes. "Dad, I'm so sorry, we had no idea." Henry held up a trembling hand. "No apologies. You did what needed to be done." He fumbled with something on his bedside table, producing a small key. "There's one more thing you need to see. In my old desk, bottom drawer, this key will open it." Hope flared in my chest. Could this be the solution we so desperately needed? As we prepared to leave, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Mary's voice, shrill and angry, cut through the air. "You can't keep me from my husband. I have rights." Ethan and I exchanged panicked looks. How had she gotten here? What more damage could she do? As Mary burst into the room, her eyes wild, I knew we were facing our final confrontation. Everything we had fought for, everything we had endured, had led to this moment. With Henry watching, his face a mask of sorrow and resolve, I squared my shoulders. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The tension in Henry's hospital room was palpable as Mary stood before us, her eyes wild with desperation. Ethan moved protectively in front of his father's bed while I clutched the small key Henry had given us. "You ungrateful children," Mary spat, her voice dripping with venom. "After everything I've done for this family." Henry's weak voice cut through the chaos. "Enough, Mary, it's over." We all turned to look at him, surprised by the strength in his tone. He struggled to sit up, and I rushed to help him. "Henry, please," Mary pleaded, her demeanor suddenly shifting. "You don't understand. I was trying to secure our future, our comfort." Henry's eyes, once clouded with illness, now shone with clarity and determination. "By stealing from me? From our son? No, Mary, I understand perfectly." He turned to Ethan and me. "The desk," he said. "Go now." We didn't need to be told twice. Leaving Henry under the watchful eye of the nursing staff, we raced to his old study. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the bottom drawer of his antique desk. Inside, we found a thick envelope. Ethan tore it open, revealing stacks of documents, stock certificates, property deeds, and a handwritten letter from Henry. "He knew," Ethan whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "He knew what Mom was doing all along. He was gathering evidence." As we pored over the documents, the full extent of Mary's deception became clear. She hadn't just been embezzling from the company. She'd been siphoning money from their personal accounts for years. building a secret nest egg for herself. Armed with this new information, we returned to the hospital. The police had arrived, alerted by the staff to Mary's unauthorized presence. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "It's time to tell the truth. All of it." Faced with the overwhelming evidence and Henry's unwavering gaze, Mary's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. She confessed to everything, the embezzlement, the lies, the manipulation. As the police led her away, she turned to us one last time. "I only wanted what was best," she said, her voice small and broken. "No, Mary," I replied, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. "You only wanted what was best for yourself." In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to set things right. With Henry's hidden assets, we were able to cover his medical expenses and move him to a better facility closer to our home. The company initiated legal proceedings against Mary, and Henry filed for divorce. Weeks turned into months, and slowly our lives began to find a new rhythm. Ethan and I grew closer through the ordeal, our bond strengthened by the trials we'd faced together. One crisp autumn morning, as we sat with Henry in the garden of his new nursing home, I felt a flutter in my stomach. Placing a hand over my abdomen, I knew with sudden certainty that our family was about to grow in an unexpected way. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling with joy, "I'm pregnant." The look of pure happiness that spread across his face was mirrored in Henry's eyes. As Ethan embraced me, I caught sight of Henry wiping away a tear. "Life goes on," Henry said softly, "and love, true love, it endures." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of family, the family we had fought so hard to protect, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had weathered the storm, exposed the lies, and come out stronger on the other side. Mary's betrayal had nearly torn us apart, but in the end, it had brought us closer together. As I looked forward to the future, to the new life growing inside me, I knew that we could face anything as long as we had each other. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still legal battles to fight, wounds to heal, and trust to rebuild. But for the first time in months, I felt hope, bright and unshakable, blooming in my chest. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and this time we would write it together, with honesty, love, and the unbreakable bonds of true family. The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my trance-like state. I'd been staring at the computer screen for hours, poring over financial statements and inheritance documents. My eyes darted to the source of the noise. A framed photo of Peter and me on our wedding day, now lying face down on the hardwood floor. "Damn it," I muttered, carefully picking up the frame. As I turned it over, a small piece of paper fluttered out. Curious, I unfolded it, my heart racing as I recognized Peter's messy scrawl. "Alice, don't worry. Once we get our hands on Clara's inheritance, we'll be set for life. Just play nice for now. P." My blood ran cold. I read the note again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there it was, clear as day. My husband and his mother were plotting to take my inheritance. The front door creaked open, and Peter's voice called out, "Clara, you home?" I quickly shoved the note into my pocket, my mind reeling. "In the study." I managed to reply, my voice surprisingly steady. Peter sauntered in, all easy smiles and charm. "Hey, babe, how's the paperwork coming along?" I forced a smile, my heart pounding. "Fine, just a lot to process." He nodded sympathetically, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I know it's tough dealing with all this after losing your parents, but don't worry, I'm here for you." The words, once comforting, now felt like acid on my skin. I shrugged off his touch, standing abruptly. "I need some air. I'm going for a walk." Peter's brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I lied, grabbing my coat. "I just need to clear my head." As I stepped outside, the crisp autumn air hit my face, bringing a moment of how long had this been going on, how much of our relationship had been a lie. My phone buzzed. A text from Alice. "Sweetie, just checking in. Peter mentioned you're having a hard time with the inheritance paperwork. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? We can talk it through." I stared at the message, bile rising in my throat. The caring mother-in-law act suddenly seemed so transparent. I typed out a quick reply. "Thanks, but I'm not feeling well. Another time." As I walked, memories flooded back. Peter's insistence on joint accounts, his sudden interest in my parents' business dealings, Alice's probing questions about my family's assets. How had I been so blind? My phone rang. Peter again. I silenced it, quickening my pace. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. Rounding the corner, I nearly collided with Henry, Peter's father. "Clara, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there." "Henry," I said, forcing a smile. "It's okay. How are you?" He studied my face, concern etched in his kind eyes. "I'm fine, but you look upset. Is everything all right?" For a moment, I considered confiding in him, but could I trust anyone in Peter's family? "I'm just dealing with a lot," I said vaguely. Henry nodded, patting my arm. "I understand. Listen, Clara, if you ever need to talk, well, I'm here. And I'm not as oblivious as Alice thinks I am." I blinked, startled by his words. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Peter. "Where are you? We need to talk about the inheritance. It's important." My stomach churned. I looked up at Henry, making a split-second decision. "Actually, Henry, there is something I need to discuss with you. Can we go somewhere private?" He nodded, gesturing to a nearby cafe. "Lead the way." As we walked, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I didn't know if I could trust Henry, but I knew one thing for certain. My life was about to change dramatically, and I needed allies. Settling into a secluded booth, I took a deep breath. "Henry, there's something you need to know about Peter and Alice." As I sat across from Henry in the dimly lit cafe, the weight of my revelation hung heavy in the air. His face, usually so placid, was a storm of emotions, shock, anger, and a flicker of something that looked like guilt. I had no idea," Henry stammered, his hands trembling around his coffee cup. "Clara, I'm so sorry." I nodded, fighting back tears. "I just can't believe it. All these years." Henry reached across the table, patting my hand. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." I took a deep breath, my mind drifting back to that fateful day 12 years ago. It was my first day of grad school. I was lost, trying to find the economics building. The memory unfolded like a bittersweet movie. Peter, dashing and charming, offering to show me the way. Our shared laughter over terrible campus coffee. Late nights studying, which turned into late nights talking about our dreams. "He was so supportive of my career goals back then," I said, my voice catching. "He'd bring me dinner when I was buried in research, proofread my papers. I thought I'd found my soulmate." Henry nodded, his expression pained. "Peter can be very convincing when he wants something." A flash of anger surged through me. Was that all I was to him? Something he wanted? Before Henry could respond, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Peter. "Claire, are you? We need to talk about the inheritance now." I showed Henry the message, my hands shaking. "See? It's all he cares about." Henry's face hardened. "Clara, there's something you should know about Alice and Peter. They've always been opportunistic, but I never thought they'd go this far." As Henry began to speak, revealing years of manipulation and schemes, I felt my world tilting on its axis. The Peter was thought I knew. The loving husband, the supportive partner, was crumbling away, replaced by a stranger wearing his face. "About 5 years into your marriage," Henry said, his voice low, "I overheard Alice and Peter talking. They were discussing your career success, your potential inheritance. Alice was pushing Peter to convince you to start a family." The pieces started falling into place. Peter's sudden interest in having children, his disappointment when I wanted to focus on my career. It had all been part of their plan. "They thought if you had a baby, you'd be more likely to step back from your career," Henry continued. "More reliant on Peter, easier to control." I felt sick. "And when that didn't work?" Henry sighed heavily. "They switched tactics. Peter started encouraging your long hours, your dedication to work, all while he and Alice were what?" I pressed, dreading the answer. "We're looking for ways to access your accounts, your assets. They've been planning this for years, Clara, waiting for the right moment." The cafe suddenly felt too small, too confining. I stood abruptly, needing to move, to breathe. "I have to go. I can't process this right now." Henry stood too, concern etched on his face. "Clara, wait, what are you going to do?" I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. "I don't know, Henry, but I can't go back to that house, not tonight." As I stepped out into the cool evening air, my phone buzzed one last time. A voicemail from Peter. "Clara, where the hell are you? We need to discuss the inheritance. Don't do anything stupid. Remember, we're in this together." I laughed bitterly, deleting the message. Together. What a joke. With nowhere else to go, I found myself walking towards my parents' house, my childhood home, now empty and echoing with memories. As I approached the familiar porch, a figure stepped out of the shadows. "There you are," Peter said, his voice deceptively calm. "We need to talk." My heart pounded as I faced Peter on the porch of my childhood home. His familiar silhouette, once a source of comfort, now filled me with dread. "How did you know I'd be here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Peter stepped closer, his eyes glinting in the dim porch light. "I know you. Clara. Where else would you go?" The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. He thought he knew me, but I was realizing I never truly knew him at all. "We need to talk about the inheritance," Peter continued, his tone businesslike. "There are some investments we should consider." "Stop," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Just stop, Peter. I know about your plan with Alice. I found your note." For a moment, shock flashed across his face before he quickly composed himself. "What note? Clara, you're not making sense. You're upset about your parents, I understand, but—" "Don't," I snapped. "Don't you dare use my parents' death as an excuse. How long have you been planning this? How long have you been lying to me?" Peter's facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of the manipulator beneath. "Clara, be reasonable. We're married. What's yours is mine. I'm just trying to secure our future." "Our future?" I laughed bitterly. "Or your future with my money." Before Peter could respond, headlights swept across the yard, a car pulled up, and to my horror, Alice stepped out. "There you are," she called, her voice syrupy sweet. "We've been so worried, dear. Why don't we all go inside and talk this through?" I felt trapped, cornered by the two people I once thought I could trust most in the world. As if on cue, my phone buzzed, a text from Henry. "Are you safe? Do you need help?" Drawing strength from the knowledge that at least one person was on my side, I straightened my spine. "No," I said firmly. "We're not going inside. In fact, I think you both should leave." Alice's smile faltered. "Now, Clara, don't be hasty. We're family. We only want what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I echoed incredulously. "Was it best for me when you pushed Peter to pressure me into having children I wasn't ready for? Or when you both started plotting to take my inheritance?" Alice's eyes widened, darting to Peter. "What have you told her?" "Nothing," Peter hissed. "She's hysterical. She found some note and jumped to conclusions." As they bickered, trying to salvage their scheme, a strange calm settled over me. In that moment, watching them scramble, I saw them for what they truly were, desperate, grasping people who had never truly cared for me at all. "I want a divorce," I said quietly, but with enough force to stop their argument cold. Peter turned to me, his face a mask of disbelief. "Clara, you can't be serious. Think about what you're saying." "I've never been more serious in my life," I replied, my voice steady. "It's over, Peter. You and Alice can leave now, or I'll call the police." Alice stepped forward, her mask of kindness completely gone. "You ungrateful little—" She was cut off by the sound of another car approaching. Henry's sedan pulled up, and he quickly got out, moving to stand beside me. "I think it's time you both left," Henry said firmly, addressing Peter and Alice. Peter looked between us, realization dawning. "Dad, you're taking her side?" Henry's voice was heavy with disappointment. "I'm on the side of what's right, son, something you and your mother seem to have forgotten." As Peter and Alice reluctantly retreated to their car, casting venomous glances back at us, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new, crushing realization. I turned to Henry, tears finally spilling over. My parents, they're really gone, aren't they? And I've been so caught up in all this that I haven't even begun to grieve. Henry placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "They are, Clara. I'm so sorry, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together." As I stood there, watching Peter and Alice drive away and feeling the solid presence of Henry beside me, I knew my life would never be the same. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with grief and legal battles, but for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. I would survive this. I would come out stronger. Little did I know, the real fight was only just beginning. The harsh fluorescent lights of my office did little to dispel the darkness that had settled over my life. It had been 3 weeks since the confrontation with Peter and Alice, 3 weeks since I'd started the divorce proceedings, and 3 weeks since I'd buried my parents. The grief and betrayal swirled together, a toxic cocktail that threatened to overwhelm me. I buried myself in work, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office. It was easier to lose myself in spreadsheets and financial reports than to face the empty house that no longer felt like home. "Clara?" My assistant's voice broke through my concentration. "There's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent." I looked up, expecting to see Peter or maybe Henry. Instead, a stern-faced man in a crisp suit stood in my doorway. "Miss Thompson? I'm Richard Hawthorne, your parents' attorney." He extended his hand, which I shook numbly. "We need to discuss your inheritance." My stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" Richard's expression was grim. "I'm afraid there are some complications. May I sit?" As he settled into the chair across from me, I braced myself for more bad news. I wasn't disappointed. "Your parents' estate is more complex than we initially thought," Richard began. "There are some outstanding debts and legal issues that need to be resolved before the inheritance can be distributed." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What kind of legal issues?" Richard sighed heavily. "It appears your father made some questionable investment decisions in the months before his death. There are allegations of insider trading." The room seemed to spin. My father, the epitome of business ethics, involved in insider trading? It didn't make sense. "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaking. "My father would never—" "I understand this is difficult to hear," Richard interrupted gently, "but the evidence is quite compelling. If these allegations are proven true, it could significantly impact the estate's value." As Richard continued to explain the legal intricacies, my mind raced. Was this why Peter and Alice had been so eager to get their hands on the inheritance? Did they know about these problems? "What does this mean for me?" I asked, interrupting Richard's explanation. He looked at me sympathetically. "It means the inheritance is frozen for now, and there's a possibility that you might be held liable for some of your father's debts." The news hit me like a physical blow. Not only was I losing my parents' legacy, but I might also end up in financial ruin. "What can I do?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "For now, we need to go through all of your parents' financial records," Richard said. "Every transaction, every investment. We need to build a defense and try to salvage what we can of the estate." I nodded, my mind already shifting into problem-solving mode. "I'll start tonight. I have access to most of their files." As Richard left, promising to be in touch soon, I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had thought the worst was behind me, but it seemed the real battle was just beginning. My phone buzzed. A text from Peter. "Heard about your dad's legal troubles. Still want that divorce? Might be smarter to stick together now." Anger surged through me, temporarily displacing the grief and fear. How dare he try to use this situation to manipulate me? With shaking hands, I typed out a reply. "The divorce stands. I'd rather face this alone than with a liar by my side." As I hit send, a strange calm settled over me. I realized that despite everything, the loss, the betrayal, the looming financial disaster, I felt stronger than I had in years. I was on my own, yes, but for the first time in a long time, I was fighting for myself. I stood up, gathering my things. It was time to go home, not to the house I'd shared with Peter, but to my parents' home. I had work to do, a legacy to protect and a future to salvage. As I walked out of the office, I made a silent promise to myself and to my parents. I would get through this. I would uncover the truth. And no matter what it took, I would reclaim my life and my family's honor. The attic of my childhood home was a time capsule filled with dusty memories and forgotten treasures. I'd been avoiding it for weeks, but with Richard's revelation about my father's alleged insider trading, I knew I had to face it. Every document, every scrap of paper could be crucial to unraveling this mess. As I sifted through old photo albums and business files, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. There was Mom in her power suit, Dad beaming proudly at my college graduation. I paused, running my fingers over their smiling faces. How had everything gone so wrong? A small, leather-bound book caught my eye. I recognized it immediately. Mom's journal. With trembling hands, I opened it, and a folded piece of paper fluttered to the floor. As I unfolded it, my heart nearly stopped. It was a letter addressed to me in my mother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, it means your father and I are gone. There's so much I need to tell you, things we should have shared years ago. Your father's business dealings, They weren't always as clean as we pretended. He got involved with some dangerous people, made some terrible mistakes. We've been trying to fix things to protect you, but if something happens to us before we can make it right, you need to know the truth. There's a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box number 542. The key is taped to the back of your father's desk in the study. Everything you need to know is there. Be careful, sweetheart. Trust no one. We love you more than you could ever know. Mom. My hands shook as I read and reread the letter. My mind raced with questions. What dangerous people? What mistakes? And why hadn't they told me? Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Peter. We need to talk. It's about your parents' business. I know things you need to hear. I stared at the message, torn between curiosity and distrust. Could Peter know something about this mess? Or was this another manipulation? Before I could decide how to respond, I heard a noise downstairs. Footsteps. My heart raced. I was sure I'd locked the door. Clara? Peter's voice called out. I know you're here. We need to talk. Panic surged through me. How had he gotten in? I quickly shoved the letter into my pocket and grabbed a heavy paperweight from a nearby box, ready to defend myself if necessary. As I crept down the attic stairs, I could hear Peter rummaging through the study. My father's study, where the key to the safety deposit box was hidden. Stop right there, I said, my voice steadier than I felt as I entered the room. Peter whirled around, surprise flashing across his face before he composed himself. Clara, thank God, I've been trying to reach you. There's something you need to know about your father's business. How did you get in here? I demanded, gripping the paperweight tighter. Peter held up his hands placatingly. I still have a key, remember? Look, I know you're angry with me, but this is important. Your father, he was involved in some shady deals. I think that's why. Why what? I interrupted, my mind racing. Did Peter know about the insider trading allegations? About the dangerous people my mother mentioned? Peter hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Why they died, Clara? I don't think your parents' death was an accident. The paperweight slipped from my hand, crashing to the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the suddenly too small room. What are you talking about? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Peter stepped closer, his eyes intense. I've been doing some digging. There are things you don't know, things your parents kept from you. But I can help you, Clara. We can figure this out together. As I stood there, caught between shock, grief, and suspicion, I realized I was at a crossroads. Could I trust Peter, the man who had betrayed me? Or was I truly alone in this fight to uncover the truth and protect my family's legacy? My mother's words echoed in my mind, trust no one. But as I looked at Peter, I knew I had to make a choice. The truth was out there, and I needed to find it, with or without him. Tell me everything, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But know this, if you're lying to me, if this is some kind of trick, I swear I'll... It's not, Peter interrupted, his face serious. I promise, Clara, no more lies. It's time you knew the truth about your parents. My heart pounded as I stared at Peter, his words about my parents' death echoing in my mind. What do you mean it wasn't an accident? I demanded, my voice trembling. Peter's eyes darted around the room nervously. Clara, your father was in deep with some dangerous people. I've been investigating, and I think... The sudden sound of the front door slamming cut him off. Clara? Peter? Alice's shrill voice rang out. Peter's face paled. Shit, he muttered. She wasn't supposed to be here. As Alice's footsteps approached, I made a split-second decision. Hide, I hissed at Peter, shoving him towards the closet. I need to hear what she has to say without you interfering. Just as Peter disappeared into the closet, Alice burst into the study, her face a mask of false concern. Clara, darling, I've been so worried. I came as soon as I heard about the inheritance troubles. I steeled myself, forcing a neutral expression. How thoughtful, Alice. How exactly did you hear about that? Alice faltered for a moment before regaining her composure. Oh, you know how news travels. Now, let's discuss how we can help you through this difficult time. As Alice prattled on about financial advisors and legal teams, my mind raced. How much did she know? Was she involved in whatever Peter was hinting at? Alice, I interrupted, what do you know about my father's business dealings? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Why, nothing more than what any of us knew. Paul was a successful businessman, but the details, well, that was his domain. I took a deep breath, deciding to take a risk. And what about the insider trading allegations? Alice's reaction was immediate and telling. Her face drained of color, and her hand flew to her throat. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. I think you do, I pressed, taking a step closer. I think you know a lot more than you're letting on. About the insider trading, about the dangerous people my father was involved with, maybe even about my parents' death. Alice's facade crumbled. You don't understand, she hissed, her kindly demeanor evaporating. Your father was going to ruin everything. We had to protect our interests. My blood ran cold. We? Who's we, Alice? Before she could answer, the closet door burst open, and Peter stumbled out. Mom, stop, he shouted. This isn't what we agreed on. Alice whirled on him, her face contorted with rage. You fool, what are you doing here? As they argued, pieces started falling into place. The inheritance scheme, the sudden interest in my parents' business, the convenient timing of their deaths. It was all connected. You were involved, I whispered. The realization hitting me like a physical blow. Both of you. In my parents' death. Peter turned to me, his eyes pleading. Clara, it's not what you think. We never meant for anyone to get hurt. It was just supposed to be a simple fraud scheme. But your father found out and what? I screamed, fury and grief overwhelming me. You had him killed? My mother, too? Alice lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Now, Clara, let's not be hasty. We can work this out. The inheritance, the business. We can split it. No one else needs to know about this unfortunate situation. I jerked away from her, disgust and rage boiling inside me. You're insane, both of you. I'm calling the police. As I reached for my phone, Peter made a desperate grab for it. In the scuffle, I lost my balance, crashing into the desk. Pain exploded in my head as it struck the corner, and the world began to spin. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Alice standing over me, a look of cold calculation in her eyes. I'm sorry, Clara, she said, her voice distant, but we can't let you ruin everything now. As consciousness slipped away, one thought burned in my mind. I had to survive this. For my parents, for justice, and for the truth that still lay hidden in that safety deposit box. The fight wasn't over yet. I awoke to the harsh glare of fluorescent lights and the steady beep of a heart monitor. As my vision cleared, I saw Henry sitting by my bedside, his face etched with concern. Clara, he said softly, leaning forward. Thank God you're awake. Do you remember what happened? The memories came flooding back. Peter's revelation, Alice's arrival, the confrontation. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in my head. Where are they? I demanded. Henry's expression darkened. Peter and Alice are in custody. I arrived just after you lost consciousness and called the police. Clara, I had no idea how far they'd gone. I'm so sorry. As Henry filled me in on the details, my mind raced. Peter and Alice were facing charges, but without concrete evidence, it might not be enough to convict them for my parents' deaths. The safety deposit box, I blurted out, struggling to get out of bed. We need to get to the bank. Henry gently pushed me back. Whoa, slow down. What safety deposit box? I quickly explained about my mother's letter and the hidden key. Henry's eyes widened. That could be the evidence we need. But Clara, you're in no condition to... I have to go. I insisted, already pulling out my IV. This might be our only chance to prove what they did. Despite the doctor's protests, I checked myself out of the hospital. Every moment felt crucial, like we were racing against an invisible clock. As we drove to the bank, Henry filled me in on the divorce proceedings. Alice has been trying to manipulate the courts, claiming you're mentally unstable. She's pushing for Peter to get half of everything, including your inheritance. I gripped the armrest, my knuckles white. Over my dead body, I muttered. At the bank, we encountered our first obstacle. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, the manager said, but we have strict protocols. Without the proper documentation, I can't allow access to the safety deposit box, even if you have the key. I felt panic rising in my chest. You don't understand. This is about my parents' murder. Please, I'm begging you. The manager hesitated, then nodded. I'll make an exception, but I'll need to be present when you open it. With trembling hands, I inserted the key. Inside the box was a USB drive and a thick folder of documents. As I flipped through the pages, my heart raced. Bank statements, emails, threatening letters, it was all here. Proof of my father's involvement in insider trading and, more importantly, evidence of blackmail from the dangerous people he'd gotten involved with. "This is it," I breathed, turning to Henry. "This proves everything." Just then, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered hesitantly. "Clara Thompson?" a gruff voice asked. "This is Detective Reeves. I'm calling about your parents' case. We've received some new information that suggests their deaths weren't accidental." My heart leapt. "I know," I said. "I have evidence. Lots of it." "That's good," the detective replied, his tone grave. "Because we've just received a threat against your life. Whoever was behind your parents' deaths knows you're on to them." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the phone tighter, my voice barely a whisper. "What do I do?" "Stay where you are," Detective Reeves instructed. "We're sending officers to your location now. Don't trust anyone." As I hung up, I turned to Henry, my mind reeling. Could I trust him? Was anyone truly on my side? "Clara?" Henry asked, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" I clutched the folder to my chest, my heart pounding. The evidence in my hands could bring justice for my parents, but it could also get me killed. As sirens wailed in the distance, I realized I was standing on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. "Henry," I said, my voice shaking, "I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you could put us both in danger. Are you ready for that?" Henry's eyes met mine, determination replacing concern. "I'm with you, Clara, whatever it takes." As the sirens grew louder, I took a deep breath. It was time to face the truth, no matter the cost. The final battle was about to begin. The courtroom fell silent as I took the stand, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Peter and Alice sat at the defense table, their faces a mix of anger and fear. Henry gave me an encouraging nod from the gallery. "Miss Thompson," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court what you discovered in your parents' safety deposit box." Taking a deep breath, I recounted everything: the insider trading, the blackmail, the threats. With each word, I could see Peter and Alice growing more agitated. "And in your opinion," the prosecutor continued, "what led to your parents' deaths?" I looked directly at Peter and Alice as I answered. "They were murdered because they were going to expose the corruption, and the people responsible are sitting right there." Chaos erupted in the courtroom. Alice leapt to her feet, screaming accusations, while Peter seemed to crumple in on himself. As the judge called for order, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The truth was finally out. The trial lasted for weeks, each day bringing new revelations and shocking twists. But in the end, justice prevailed. Peter and Alice were found guilty on all counts, including conspiracy to commit murder. As I watched them being led away in handcuffs, I felt no joy, only a profound sense of relief and sadness. It was over. But at what cost? In the months that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I moved back into my childhood home, finding comfort in the memories it held. Slowly, I began to heal. One crisp autumn day, as I was sorting through old photo albums in the attic, I came across a picture of my parents holding me as a baby. Their faces were radiant with love and hope for the future. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched the photo to my chest. In that moment, I realized something profound. Despite everything I'd been through, I still wanted that. A family, a future filled with love and hope. 4 years later, I stood in that same attic, my hand resting on my swollen belly. The room was half-packed, filled with boxes labeled nursery and baby clothes. "Clara?" my husband's voice called from downstairs. "The movers are here. Are you ready?" I smiled, taking one last look around the room that held so many memories, both painful and precious. "Coming!" I called back. As I made my way downstairs, I paused in front of the mirror in the hallway. The woman staring back at me was different from the one who had first uncovered Peter's betrayal all those years ago. Stronger, wiser, and finally, truly happy. My husband David met me at the bottom of the stairs, his face lighting up as he saw me. "There's my girls," he said softly, placing a gentle hand on my belly. I leaned into his embrace, feeling our baby kick between us. "We're ready," I whispered. As we walked out of my childhood home for the last time, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The house had served its purpose. It had been a sanctuary, a place of healing. But now it was time for a new chapter. We drove to our new home, a charming house with a big yard and plenty of room for our growing family. As David helped me out of the car, I caught sight of Henry walking up the driveway, a housewarming gift in his hands. "Welcome home," he said, pulling me into a warm hug. Looking at the two men who had stood by me through everything, my supportive husband and the father-in-law who had become more like a father, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That night, as David and I sat on our new porch swing, watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for justice, it had all led to this moment. "What are you thinking about?" David asked, squeezing my hand. I smiled, placing our intertwined hands on my belly. "The future," I replied, "and how sometimes you have to go through the darkest times to find your way to the light." As the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, I felt our baby kick again. A reminder that life goes on, that there's always hope for new beginnings. I had survived, I had thrived, and now surrounded by love and on the cusp of motherhood, I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. The end was really just the beginning. The first thing I noticed when I stepped through the front door was the silence. No welcoming embrace, no warm words of congratulations, just the faint smell of stale beer and takeout. "James?" I called out, my voice echoing through our once cozy home. I shifted baby Ethan in my arms, his tiny face scrunched up in sleep. After 2 weeks at my mother's house recovering from the birth, I'd expected, well, something more than this. The living room was a mess. Pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, empty beer cans scattered across the floor. I sighed, feeling the weight of motherhood and housekeeping already pressing down on my shoulders. "In here?" James's gruff voice came from the kitchen. I steeled myself and walked in, hoping to see a hint of the man I'd married. He was slouched at the table, scrolling through his phone. He barely glanced up as I entered. "Oh, you're back." "Yes, we're home," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Did you miss us?" James shrugged, his eyes still on his screen. "Sure. How's the kid?" "Ethan," I corrected gently. "His name is Ethan, remember? Would you like to hold him?" Finally, James looked up. His eyes widened, and not in a good way. "Jesus, Alicia, you look different." I felt my cheeks flush. "I just had a baby, James. It takes time for the body to—" Yeah, he waved his hand dismissively. "Just maybe lay off the ice cream for a while." "Huh? You're looking a bit puffy." The words hit me like a slap. I clutched Ethan closer, as if to shield him from his father's callousness. "I can't believe you just said that." James stood up, stretching lazily. "What? I'm just being honest. You asked me if I missed you, and honestly, I missed the old Alicia, the hot one." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I'm still me, James. I'm just adjusting." He snorted, grabbing another beer from the fridge. "Yeah, well, adjust faster. I didn't sign up for a mom bod." The room seemed to spin around me. Was this really happening? Was this the man I'd chosen to father my child? "I'm going to put Ethan down for a nap," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you could clean up a bit while I'm gone?" James just grunted, already back to his phone. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like a mountain. When I reached the nursery, pristine and untouched since I'd left for the hospital, I finally let the tears fall. "Oh, Ethan," I whispered, gently laying him in his crib. "I'm so sorry. I thought your daddy would be different." As I stood there watching my perfect little boy sleep, a strange feeling began to creep over me. It wasn't just sadness or disappointment. It was something darker, something I'd never felt before. Rage. How dare he? How dare James treat me like this after everything I'd been through? The sleepless nights, the pain, the fear. All to bring his son into the world. And this was how he repaid me? I clenched my fists, a plan already forming in my mind. If James wanted the old Alicia back, he'd get her, but not in the way he expected. "I promise you, Ethan," I whispered fiercely, "Mommy's going to fix this, and Daddy, he's going to regret ever taking us for granted." As if in response, Ethan's tiny hand reached out, grasping my finger. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about us, and I would do whatever it took to protect my son from a father who clearly didn't deserve him. The game was on, and James had no idea what was coming. I never thought I'd dread the sound of my own husband coming home, but here I was, tensing up at the jangle of keys in the lock. Ethan squirmed in my arms, sensing my anxiety. "Honey, I'm home," James called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I heard the thud of his briefcase hitting the floor, followed by the familiar hiss of a beer can opening. "In the nursery," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I just finished changing Ethan and was about to put him down for a nap. Heavy footsteps approached, and James appeared in the doorway, beer in hand. His eyes raked over me, and I felt myself shrink under his gaze. "Still wearing those maternity clothes, huh?" he said, taking a swig. "You know, most women are back in shape by now." I bit my lip, fighting back tears. "James, it's only been 6 weeks. The doctor said, he mimicked. "I'm starting to think you're using that as an excuse. Maybe you just like being fat." The words stung, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. "Can we not do this in front of Ethan?" James rolled his eyes. "He's a baby. He doesn't understand anything." He peered at Ethan, his lip curling slightly. "Though I gotta say, he's not exactly a looker, is he? Must take after your side of the family." Something snapped inside me. "That's enough!" I hissed, careful not to raise my voice too much. "He's perfect, and if you can't see that, then maybe you need to take a good, that hard look at yourself." For a moment, James looked taken aback. Then his face hardened. "Watch your tone, Alicia. I'm the one bringing home the bacon around here. The least you could do is try to look good for me." I placed Ethan in his crib, my hands shaking with anger. "And what exactly have you done to help since we brought him home? Have you changed a single diaper? Gotten up for a night feeding? Hell, have you even picked up after yourself?" James' face flushed red. "That's woman's work. I didn't become a father to play housemaid." "No," I spat. "You became a father to criticize and belittle your wife and son. Well done, James. Father of the Year material right here." He took a menacing step towards me, and for a moment I thought he might hit me. Instead, he drained his beer and tossed the can on the floor. "Clean that up," he growled. "And while you're at it, maybe think about hitting the gym. I'm not asking for much, just for my wife to look like my wife again." With that, he stormed out, leaving me trembling in his wake. I heard the TV blare to life downstairs, some inane sports commentary filling the house. I sank to the floor, tears finally spilling over. How had it come to this? The man I married, the one who had held my hand through labor and promised to love me forever, where was he? A soft coo from the crib caught my attention. I looked up to see Ethan watching me, his tiny face a picture of innocence. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I stood up, wiping my eyes. "No more," I whispered to Ethan. "Mommy's done being a punching bag." I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Mom?" I said when she answered. "I need your help with something." As I outlined my plan to Barbara, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. James wanted the old Alicia back? Fine. But he'd soon learn that you should be careful what you wish for. "Are you sure about this, honey?" Mom asked, concern evident in her voice. I looked at Ethan, peacefully drifting off to sleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied. "It's time for a change. And James? He won't know what hit him." As I hung up, I heard James shouting from downstairs, demanding dinner. I squared my shoulders, a grim smile playing on my lips. Let him yell. His days of calling the shots were numbered. The game was changing, and I was about to become a player he never saw coming. The acrid smell of whiskey hit me before I even opened the front door. My stomach clenched, knowing what awaited me inside. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the storm. "James?" I called out, stepping into our dimly lit living room. Empty bottles littered the coffee table, and the TV blared some mindless reality show. A grunt from the couch was my only answer. I found James sprawled there, eyes glazed, another half-empty bottle dangling from his fingers. "You're home early," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Rough day at work?" He snorted, taking another swig. "What do you care? Too busy with your precious baby to give a damn about me." I bit back a retort. Engaging him when he was like this never ended well. "I'm going to check on Ethan," I said, turning towards the stairs. "Oh yeah, run to your little brat," James slurred, his words dripping with venom. "God knows he needs all the attention he can get. Might grow up to look halfway decent if you hover enough." I froze, my hand on the banister. "What did you just say?" James hauled himself up, swaying slightly. "You heard me. Kid's as ugly as sin. Guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, huh?" Something snapped inside me. All the pent-up anger, hurt, and frustration of the past months came rushing to the surface. "How dare you?" I hissed, advancing on him. "How dare you speak about our son that way?" He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Our son, please. I'm starting to wonder if he's even mine. Gus, maybe you've been fooling around, huh? Found someone who doesn't mind your fat ass? The slap echoed through the room before I even realized I'd raised my hand. James stumbled back, shock momentarily replacing the drunken haze in his eyes. You bitch, he snarled, rubbing his cheek. You'll pay for that. Fear gripped me as he lunged forward, but years of resentment gave me strength. I sidestepped his clumsy attack, sending him crashing into the coffee table. Enough! I shouted, my voice ringing with an authority I didn't know I possessed. I've had enough of your abuse, James. This ends now. He struggled to his feet, glass crunching under his shoes. You think you can stand up to me? You're nothing without me, Alicia. Nothing. A baby's cry pierced the air, snapping us both out of our rage. I turned and raced up the stairs, heart pounding. Behind me, I heard James stumbling after me, his curses following me like a toxic cloud. I burst into the nursery, scooping Ethan into my arms. Shh, baby, it's okay, I murmured, even as my own tears threatened to fall. Mommy's here. James appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of drunken fury. Put him down, he growled. This is between us. I clutched Ethan tighter, backing away. Stay back, James. I mean it. He took a menacing step forward. Or what? You'll slap me again? Go ahead. Give me a reason. In that moment, looking into the eyes of the man I once loved, now twisted by alcohol and hate, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Ethan, about giving him the life he deserved. No, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I won't give you anything. Not anymore. I reached for my phone with my free hand, never taking my eyes off James. I'm calling the police, I told him, and then I'm leaving, for good. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or a moment of clarity. But it was quickly swallowed by rage. You wouldn't dare, he snarled. I met his gaze, unflinching. Watch me. As I dialed 911, a strange calm settled over me. This was it, the point of no return. But as I held Ethan close, feeling his tiny heart beating against mine, I knew I was making the right choice. The game had changed. And this time, I was playing for keeps. The gym locker room echoed with the sound of my labored breathing as I stared at my reflection in the mirror. 3 months had passed since that fateful night when I'd finally stood up to James. Now, here I was, drenched in sweat, my muscles aching, but a fire burning in my eyes that I hadn't seen in years. You're killing it, Alicia, Sarah, my personal trainer, said as she poked her head into the locker room. Same time tomorrow? I nodded, managing a smile. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As Sarah left, I allowed myself a moment of pride. The woman in the mirror was changing, not just physically, but mentally. The soft, pliable Alicia who'd let James walk all over her was fading away, replaced by someone stronger, fiercer. Back home, I found my mother, Barbara, playing with Ethan on the living room floor. She'd been my rock these past months, moving in to help with Ethan while I focused on rebuilding myself. How was the gym, sweetheart? She asked, scooping up Ethan as I bent to kiss his forehead. Brutal, I admitted, but in a good way. I feel alive. Barbara's eyes crinkled with a mixture of pride and concern. And James? Any word? I shook my head. After that night, James had moved out, alternating between begging for forgiveness and hurling threats. But I'd held firm, focusing on myself and Ethan. His lawyer called again, I said, sinking onto the couch. They're pushing for joint custody. Barbara's face hardened. Over my dead body. After what he did. I know, Mom, I interrupted gently. But the court doesn't see it that way, without concrete evidence of abuse. The words hung heavy in the air. We both knew what was at stake. If James got joint custody, all my efforts to protect Ethan could be undone. As if sensing the tension, Ethan began to fuss. I took him from Barbara, breathing in his sweet baby scent. It's okay, little man, I murmured. Mommy's got you. Later that night, after putting Ethan to bed, I sat at the kitchen table poring over legal documents. The custody battle loomed, a dark cloud on the horizon of my newfound strength. A text message lit up my phone. James, miss me yet? You can't keep my son from me forever. I'll see you in court, bitch. My hands shook as I set the phone down. How dare he? After everything he'd done, he still thought he had the upper hand. In that moment, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just about getting back at James anymore. This was about protecting Ethan, about breaking the cycle of abuse before it could touch my son. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Alicia? It's late. Is everything okay? Detective Rodriguez, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Remember when you said to call if I ever wanted to press charges? I'm ready. There was a pause on the other end. Are you sure about this, Alicia? Once we start, there's no going back. I looked at the baby monitor, watching Ethan's peaceful, sleeping face. Then my eyes drifted to the mirror in the hallway, catching my reflection. The woman staring back at me wasn't a victim anymore. She was a fighter. I'm sure, I said firmly. It's time James faced the consequences of his actions, and I'm going to make damn sure he never hurts us again. As I hung up, a mix of fear and determination coursed through me. The path ahead would be hard, but I was ready. James wanted a fight. He was about to get one he'd never see coming. The game had changed, and this time I was playing for keeps. For Ethan. For myself. And for every woman who'd ever been told she wasn't enough. Watch out, James. The new Alicia is coming for you, and she's not holding back. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at me. 6 months of grueling workouts, strict dieting, and sheer determination had transformed my body. The soft, postpartum curves James had so cruelly mocked were replaced by lean muscle and renewed confidence. Alicia? Mom called from downstairs. James is here for his visitation with Ethan. My stomach clenched. Despite the restraining order, the court had granted James supervised visits. I took a deep breath, smoothing down my form-fitting workout clothes. Time to face the music. As I descended the stairs, I heard James's voice, thick with false charm. There's my big boy, come to Daddy. I rounded the corner to find James, looking disheveled and slightly bloated, awkwardly holding Ethan. His eyes widened as they landed on me, a flicker of something, shock, desire, crossing his face before he masked it with a sneer. Well, well, he drawled. Look who finally decided to take care of herself. I bit back a retort, focusing instead on Ethan. Hey, sweetie, Mommy's right here if you need me, okay? James scoffed. He doesn't need you hovering. Do you, champ? He bounced Ethan roughly, causing him to whimper. Careful, I snapped, instinctively reaching for my son. James pulled away, his eyes narrowing. Back off. It's my time with him. The tension in the room was palpable. Mom stepped in, ever the peacekeeper. Why don't we all sit down? I've made some snacks. As we moved to the living room, I couldn't help but notice James's labored breathing, the way his shirt strained against his expanding waistline. My secret weapon, weekly deliveries of high-calorie, irresistible treats to his apartment, was clearly working. James plopped onto the couch, immediately reaching for the plate of cookies. At least someone in this house knows how to treat a guest, he mumbled through a mouthful of crumbs. I perched on the edge of an armchair, watching him like a hawk as he interacted with Ethan. Despite his bravado, it was clear he had no idea how to handle a baby. So, James said, eyeing me over Ethan's head, you've been busy, huh? Trying to relive your glory days? I met his gaze steadily. I've been taking care of myself, something you might want to consider. His face flushed red. Watch it, Alicia. Don't forget who made you who you are. Oh, I haven't forgotten, I replied, my voice low and dangerous. I remember everything. The air crackled with unspoken threats. Ethan, sensing the tension, began to cry. James looked panicked, holding him at arm's length. Here, I said, standing up. Let me. I said back off, James snapped, jerking away. In his haste, he lost his grip on Ethan. Time seemed to slow down. I lunged forward, my heart in my throat, as Ethan slipped from James's grasp. By some miracle, I managed to catch him just before he hit the floor. Oh my God, Mom gasped, rushing to our side. I clutched Ethan to my chest, my whole body shaking. James stood frozen, his face ashen. I didn't mean to, he stammered. White-hot rage coursed through me. Get out, I hissed. Get out now. Alicia, please, it was an accident. An accident, I exploded. You could have seriously hurt him. This ends now, James. No more visits, no more chances. I'm calling my lawyer, and I'm going for full custody. James's face contorted with fury. You can't do that. He's my son, too. A son you just dropped, I shouted back. Leave, James, before I call the police. For a moment I thought he might lunge at me, but then, deflating like a punctured balloon, he turned and stomped out, slamming the door behind him. As the echo faded, I sank to the floor, still cradling Ethan. Mom knelt beside us, her hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked softly. I looked down at Ethan, his tiny fingers curled around mine, his eyes wide with trust. In that moment, I knew there was no going back. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about protecting my child, no matter the cost. "No," I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "But I will be. We both will be." As I held my son close, a steely resolve settled over me. James had no idea what was coming, but he was about to find out just how far a mother would go to protect her child. "Mommy, do I have to go?" Ethan's small voice quivered as I helped him into his coat. My heart clenched, but I forced a smile. "It's just for the weekend, sweetie. Remember what we talked about? Daddy misses you." 4 years had passed since that fateful day when James nearly dropped Ethan. Despite my best efforts, the court had recently granted James unsupervised weekend visits. The thought of Ethan alone with him made my stomach churn. A car horn blared outside. James, impatient as ever. "Come on, champ!" James called from the driveway, his voice overly cheerful. "We've got a big weekend planned." I walked Ethan out, my grip on his hand perhaps a little too tight. James stood by his car, a far cry from the fit man I'd married. Years of my special deliveries and his own neglect had taken their toll. He was easily 100 pounds heavier, his once chiseled face now puffy and red. "Hey, big guy!" James scooped Ethan up, grunting with the effort. "Ready for some man time?" Ethan nodded hesitantly, looking back at me. I swallowed hard, pushing down the urge to snatch him back. "Be good for Daddy, okay?" I said, kissing his forehead. Then, to James, my voice low and steely, "Remember, he has swimming lessons tomorrow at 10. Don't be late." James rolled his eyes. "Relax, Alicia. I've got this. Maybe if you weren't so busy at that gym of yours, you'd trust me more." I bit back a retort. My job at the fitness club had been a godsend, not just financially, but for my sanity. Plus, it gave me access to resources I needed for the next phase of my plan. As they drove away, I felt a familiar mix of anger and fear bubbling up. I needed to channel it, to stay focused. I headed to the gym, throwing myself into a punishing workout. Hours later, drenched in sweat and pleasantly sore, I checked my phone. No messages from James. I tried not to worry. He wouldn't dare mess this up, not when he was finally getting what he wanted. Sunday afternoon arrived with agonizing slowness. I paced the living room, checking the clock every few minutes. They were late. Very late. Just as I was about to call, I heard a car door slam. I rushed outside to find James struggling to get Ethan out of the car seat. "What happened?" I demanded, taking in Ethan's tear-stained face and James' disheveled appearance. "Nothing," James snapped. "Traffic was bad." But as Ethan ran to me, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A small angry bruise on his arm. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But how did you get this bruise?" Before he could answer, James cut in. "He fell at the park. Kids, you know. Always getting into scrapes." Ethan looked up at me, his eyes wide and fearful. In that moment, I knew James was lying. "Go inside, sweetie," I said softly. "Grandma's waiting with a surprise." As soon as Ethan was out of earshot, I rounded on James. "What really happened?" James's face darkened. "I told you he fell. Are you calling me a liar?" "Wouldn't be the first time," I shot back. "If I find out you laid a hand on him..." "You'll what?" James sneered, stepping closer. "Face it, Alicia. You've got nothing on me. The court sees what I want them to see, a loving father who deserves time with his son." For a moment I saw red. All the pain, all the humiliation he'd put me through over the years came rushing back. But then something shifted. A calm, cold determination settled over me. "You're right, James," I said, my voice steady. "The court sees what you want them to see. For now." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, a predator's smile. "You'll find out soon enough. Enjoy your visitations while you can." As I turned to go inside, James called out, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "You can't take him from me, Alicia. He's my son, too." I paused at the door, looking back at the pathetic, bloated shell of the man I once loved. "Watch me," I said softly, and closed the door on his stunned face. Inside, I hugged Ethan close, my mind racing. The final phase of my plan was set. James had no idea what was coming, but he was about to learn a very painful lesson. The game was almost over, and I was holding all the cards. The quaint bell above the cafe door chimed as I stepped inside, my heart pounding beneath my carefully chosen outfit. James's parents, John and Kathy, looked up from behind the counter, their smiles faltering as they took in my transformed appearance. "Alicia," Kathy gasped, "is that really you?" I smiled, a predator's grin. "In the flesh. Thanks for agreeing to this little family gathering." John's eyes narrowed. "James said you had something important to discuss. He's on his way." As if on cue, the bell chimed again. James lumbered in, his face flushed from the short walk from the parking lot. He froze when he saw me, his jaw dropping comically. "What the hell is this?" he sputtered. I turned to face him, relishing the shock in his eyes. "Hello, James. So glad you could join us." Kathy, ever the peacemaker, gestured to a table. "Why don't we all sit down? I've prepared some refreshments." As we settled in, the tension was palpable. James couldn't take his eyes off me, a mix of desire and anger clouding his features. His parents exchanged worried glances. "Where's Ethan?" James demanded. "Safe with my mother," I replied coolly. "This conversation isn't for children's ears." John leaned forward. "Alicia, what's going on? You said this was urgent." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "It is. I'm here to talk about James, about the kind of man your son really is." James's face darkened. "Watch it, Alicia," he growled, but I was done being silenced. "For years," I continued, my voice steady, "James has been emotionally and verbally abusive. He's belittled me, mocked my appearance after giving birth to his child, and neglected his duties as a father." Kathy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. John's brow furrowed in disbelief. "That's ridiculous," James scoffed. "Don't listen to her. She's clearly lost her mind." I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the play button. "Would you like to hear it for yourself?" The color drained from James's face as I played the recordings. His cruel words, his drunken rants, the sound of objects being thrown, all preserved in damning clarity. "My God," John whispered, his face ashen. Kathy reached for James's hand. "Sweetheart, is this true?" James jerked away, his eyes wild. "She set me up. She's been planning this all along." I met his gaze, unflinching. "You're right, James. I have been planning to free myself and our son from your toxicity." I turned to his parents, my voice softening. "There's more. Last weekend, Ethan came home with bruises. James claims he fell, but—" "You bitch!" James roared, lunging across the table. His meaty hands closed around my throat, knocking us both to the ground. For a moment, panic seized me. Then years of training kicked in. I brought my knee up sharply, connecting with his soft underbelly. As he wheezed, I twisted, breaking his grip and pinning him to the floor. "That's enough!" John's voice boomed as he and Kathy pulled us apart. I stood, straightening my clothes, my composure intact. James sprawled on the floor, red-faced and panting. "I'm pressing charges," I said calmly, "for assault and for what he did to Ethan. I have photographs, medical reports, everything." Kathy sobbed quietly, while John looked at his son with a mixture of disgust and disappointment. "James," he said, his voice heavy, "is this who you've become?" James struggled to his feet, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. "You can't do this," he wheezed. "I'll lose everything." I met his gaze, years of pain and anger crystallizing into cold determination. "You should have thought of that before you laid a hand on our son." As James crumpled, the fight finally leaving him, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle wasn't over. There would be court dates, custody hearings, and no doubt more of James's desperate attempts to maintain control. But standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of the life I'd once known, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The old Alicia was gone. In her place stood a warrior, a protector, a survivor, and God help anyone who tried to stand in my way. The courtroom fell silent as I approached the stand, my heels clicking against the polished floor. James sat at the defendant's table, a shadow of his former self, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his frame. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a flicker of the old arrogance there, quickly replaced by fear. "Mrs. Henderson," the judge said, "you may begin your testimony." I took a deep breath, my hand resting on the thick folder of evidence I'd compiled over the years. "Your Honor, I'm here today not just as James Henderson's soon-to-be ex-wife, but as a survivor of years of emotional and physical abuse." For the next hour, I laid bare the ugly truth of my marriage. The cruel taunts about my postpartum body, the neglect of our son, the escalating aggression that culminated in Ethan's bruises. With each revelation, I felt lighter, as if shedding the weight of secrets I'd carried for too long. James's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, a scorned woman out for revenge. But the evidence spoke for itself, the recordings, the photographs, the medical reports. Even James's parents, sitting stiffly in the gallery, couldn't meet my eyes. As I finished my testimony, the judge leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, given everything you've endured, what do you hope to achieve here today? I straightened my shoulders, my voice steady. Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice and for protection. I want full custody of my son, and I want James to get the help he clearly needs. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. James's face contorted with rage, but a warning look from his lawyer silenced him. The judge nodded thoughtfully. And the divorce papers you've submitted? I allowed myself a small smile. Those are long overdue, Your Honor. As I returned to my seat, I caught sight of my mother in the audience, tears streaming down her face. She mouthed, I'm so proud of you, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her unwavering support. The rest of the proceedings passed in a blur. When the judge finally delivered her verdict granting me full custody and approving the divorce, I felt a curious mix of elation and exhaustion. James, his face ashen, was led away in handcuffs to await sentencing for child endangerment. As he passed me, he leaned in and hissed, This isn't over, Alicia. I met his gaze calmly. Yes, James, it is. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by a flurry of reporters, I spotted John and Kathy hovering uncertainly at the edge of the crowd. I made my way over to them, my heart heavy but resolute. Alicia, Kathy began, her voice trembling. We had no idea, all those years. John cut in, his face lined with shame. We failed you, and we failed our grandson. Can you ever forgive us? I took a deep breath, considering my words carefully. It's not about forgiveness right now. It's about moving forward. Ethan will need his grandparents in his life. If you're willing to be there for him, really be there, then we can work on rebuilding. They nodded eagerly, tears in their eyes. As they walked away, I felt a chapter of my life closing. My mother appeared at my side, wrapping an arm around me. Ready to go home, sweetheart? Home. The word held new meaning now. Not a battleground, not a prison, but a sanctuary for me and my son. More than ready, I replied, smiling. As we drove away, leaving the courthouse and the remnants of my old life behind, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Single motherhood, healing from trauma, rebuilding my life. But for the first time in years, I was excited for the future. The woman who had entered that courtroom was not the same one leaving it. I was stronger now, wiser, unbreakable. James had tried to diminish me, to break my spirit, but in the end, he'd only fueled my transformation. I thought of Ethan waiting for me at home and smiled. We had a whole new life ahead of us, full of love, laughter, and endless possibilities. The game was over, and this time we had both won. The little pink plus sign stared back at me, a beacon of hope and joy in the sterile bathroom light. I couldn't stop the smile from spreading across my face. After months of trying, Daniel and I were finally going to be parents. I clutched the pregnancy test to my chest, my heart racing with excitement. Daniel, I called out, rushing down the stairs. Daniel, I have amazing news. The living room was empty, but I could hear muffled voices coming from the kitchen. As I approached, Daniel's deep laugh mingled with a familiar, shrill cackle that made my stomach drop. No, it couldn't be. I rounded the corner to find my husband and his mother, Evelyn, sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by moving boxes. Miranda, there you are, Daniel said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Mom's here. Evelyn's perfectly coiffed silver hair gleamed as she turned to me. Her lips curled in what I'm sure she thought was a welcoming smile. Miranda, dear, how lovely to see you. I forced a smile, my hand instinctively moving to cover my still flat stomach. Evelyn, what a surprise. I didn't know you were visiting. Daniel cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Actually, honey, Mom's not just visiting. She's moving in with us. The world tilted on its axis. What? I managed to choke out. Now, Miranda, Evelyn cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Daniel and I thought it would be best if I was here to help out. You're so busy with your little teaching job after all. I turned to Daniel, searching his face for any sign that this was all some cruel joke. When exactly were you planning on telling me about this? He at least had the decency to look sheepish. I was going to tell you tonight, sweetheart. It all happened so fast. Mom's lease was up, and well, we have the spare room. The nursery, I whispered, my hand tightening around the pregnancy test hidden behind my back. What was that, dear? Evelyn asked, her eyes narrowing. I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. Nothing. Daniel, can I speak with you privately for a moment? We stepped into the hallway, and I could feel Evelyn's eyes boring into my back. Daniel, how could you make this decision without talking to me first? I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing. Miranda, she's my mother. What was I supposed to do, let her be homeless? That's not the point, and you know it, I said, my frustration mounting. We're supposed to be partners. We make decisions like this together. I know. I'm sorry, he said, but his apology felt hollow. Look, it's just temporary, okay? Until she finds a new place. I wanted to argue further, to tell him about the baby growing inside me, but the words stuck in my throat. This should have been a moment of celebration, not conflict. Fine, I said, defeated, but we need to talk about this more later. As we re-entered the kitchen, Evelyn was unpacking a box, filling our cabinets with her gaudy china. Oh, Miranda, she said, not bothering to look at me. I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of rearranging things a bit. This kitchen could use a woman's touch. I bit my tongue, tasting blood. Actually, Evelyn, I'd prefer if you didn't. Nonsense, dear, she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. You'll see, this will be so much better. Now, where do you keep your good silver? The set I saw earlier was rather quaint. I watched in horror as she systematically dismantled the kitchen I had so carefully organized. Daniel stood by, silent and useless, as his mother steamrolled over every protest I attempted to make. As the evening wore on, my joy at the pregnancy faded, replaced by a gnawing dread. How was I supposed to bring a child into this world when I couldn't even control what happened in my own home? Later that night, as I lay in bed next to a snoring Daniel, I placed a hand on my stomach and whispered a quiet promise. Don't worry, little one. Mommy will figure this out, somehow. The morning sickness hit me like a freight train, sending me rushing to the bathroom. As I knelt on the cold tile floor, heaving into the toilet, I heard Evelyn's voice outside the door. Miranda, dear, are you all right in there? I wiped my mouth, struggling to catch my breath. I'm fine, Evelyn. Just not feeling well. The door creaked open, and Evelyn's perfectly manicured hand appeared, holding a glass of water. Here, drink this. It'll settle your stomach. I accepted the water gratefully, but as I reached for it, my eyes caught sight of something on the vanity. My driver's license was peeking out from beneath Evelyn's makeup bag. What's my ID doing here? I asked, my voice hoarse. Evelyn's eyes widened for a split second before her face smoothed into a mask of innocence. Oh, I must have accidentally swept it up with my things when I was tidying earlier. Silly me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Evelyn left, I quickly checked my wallet. My bank book was missing too. Later that day, I cornered Daniel in his home office. We need to talk about your mother, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, not looking up from his computer. What is it now, Miranda? I found my ID in her things, and my bank book is missing. Don't you think that's strange? Daniel finally met my gaze, his expression a mixture of exasperation and disbelief. Are you seriously accusing my mother of stealing? She's probably just trying to help organize things. By taking my personal documents? I countered, my frustration mounting. Miranda, you're being paranoid, he said dismissively. Mom's just trying to help. Maybe you misplaced your bank book. I opened my mouth to argue further, but a wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of his desk. Daniel's face softened slightly. Are you okay? You've been sick a lot lately. This was my chance. I took a deep breath, ready to share the news of my pregnancy, but before I could speak, Evelyn's voice rang out from downstairs. Daniel, honey, can you come help me with something? He stood up immediately. We'll talk later, okay? Try to get some rest. As he left the room, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. How had my life become this? My husband more concerned with his mother's needs than his wife's well-being. That evening, I sat at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, as Evelyn regaled us with stories of Daniel's childhood. And then little Daniel said, Mommy, when I grow up, I want to marry you. Evelyn cackled, reaching out to pinch Daniel's cheek. He laughed along with her, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. I set down my fork, my appetite completely gone. If you'll excuse me, I murmured, standing up. But you've hardly touched your food, Evelyn said, her voice laced with false concern. Are you watching your figure, dear? You have been looking a bit puffy lately. I froze, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. I'm just not feeling well, I managed to say. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of something poking out of Evelyn's purse on the counter. The corner of my bank book was just visible. My heart raced as I approached, casually reaching for a glass of water. In one swift motion, I snatched the bank book and slipped it into my pocket. Miranda? Daniel called. What are you doing? I turned, forcing a smile. Just getting some water. I think I'll go lie down. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Evelyn's voice, low and insistent. Daniel, I'm worried about Miranda. She's been acting so strange lately. Do you think she might be unstable? I clutched the railing, my knuckles turning white. This woman was trying to turn my husband against me, and worse, she was succeeding. In the safety of our bedroom, I opened the bank book with shaking hands. My blood ran cold as I saw unfamiliar transactions, large withdrawals I had never made. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about Evelyn moving in. This was war, and I was fighting for my marriage, my home, and the future of my unborn child. The smell of bacon wafted up the stairs, turning my stomach. I groaned, pushing myself out of bed. Another day in this house of horrors. As I made my way downstairs, I heard Daniel and Evelyn's voices in the kitchen. Now, Daniel, Evelyn cooed, a man needs a hearty breakfast. Miranda should be up making this for you. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, my blood boiling. Mom, Miranda's been feeling under the weather lately, Daniel replied, his tone apologetic. Nonsense, Evelyn scoffed. In my day, we didn't let a little queasiness stop us from taking care of our husbands. I'd heard enough. I stormed into the kitchen, startling them both. Good morning, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I see you're discussing my shortcomings as a wife. Daniel at least had the decency to look ashamed. Evelyn, however, merely raised an eyebrow. Well, if the shoe fits, dear. I turned to Daniel, my patience wearing thin. And what do you think about this, Daniel? Do you agree that I should be up at the crack of dawn, slaving over a hot stove for you? He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Miranda, you know that's not what we meant. Oh, I think that's exactly what you meant, I snapped. Well, let me make something clear. I am your wife, not your servant. And you, I turned to Evelyn, are a guest in our home. It's about time you started acting like one. Evelyn's face turned an alarming shade of red. How dare you speak to me like that? Daniel, are you going to let her talk to your mother this way? Daniel looked between us, clearly torn. Ladies, please, can't we all just get along? I laughed bitterly. Get along? Your mother has been undermining me since the moment she moved in, and you've done nothing but enable her. Now, Miranda, Daniel started, his tone patronizing, I think you're overreacting. Mom's just trying to help. Help? I exploded. Is that what you call it? She's taken over our home, criticized everything I do, and now she's trying to turn you against me, and you're letting her. Daniel's face hardened. That's enough, Miranda. I won't have you disrespecting my mother like this. I stared at him, shocked. Your mother? What about your wife? What about our family? What family? Evelyn interjected. All I see is a woman who can't even take care of her husband properly. Something inside me snapped. Oh, I'll show you family, I hissed, my hand moving to my stomach. I'm pregnant, you insufferable witch. The kitchen fell silent. Daniel's jaw dropped and Evelyn's eyes narrowed to slits. Pregnant? Daniel stammered. Why didn't you tell me? I've been trying to, I said, my voice breaking. But you've been too busy catering to your mother's every whim to notice anything about me. Evelyn recovered quickly, her shock morphing into a saccharine smile. Oh, how wonderful, Daniel. You're going to be a father. We must start preparing right away. Miranda, dear, you'll need to cut back on work. A mother's place is in the home, after all. I whirled on her. No, absolutely not. I love my job and I'm not giving it up. But who will take care of the baby? Evelyn pressed. Surely you don't expect Daniel to change diapers and warm bottles? I turned to my husband, praying he'd stand up for me, for us. Daniel? He ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. Well, honey, Mom has a point. Someone needs to be home with the baby. In that moment, I saw my future flash before my eyes. Trapped in this house under Evelyn's thumb, with a husband who'd never stand up for me, I couldn't let that happen. No, I said, my voice steady and cold. If that's how you both feel, then things need to change. Now. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. I'm going to work. When I get back, we're going to have a serious conversation about the future of this family. All of us. As I walked out the door, I heard Evelyn's voice behind me. Daniel, we can't let her treat us this way. Something must be done. I slammed the door, my hands shaking. This was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was fighting back, and I wasn't going to lose. The weeks following my pregnancy announcement were a blur of tension and exhaustion. My morning sickness had intensified, leaving me drained and weak. Yet Evelyn's demands never ceased, and Daniel's indifference grew more pronounced with each passing day. One evening I stumbled into the kitchen, my head pounding and my stomach churning. The sight that greeted me made my blood boil. Evelyn was at the stove, stirring a pot of what smelled like her infamous beef stew. The very smell that had been making me nauseous for days. Evelyn, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I thought I asked you not to cook that. The smell makes me sick. She turned, her face a mask of innocence. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I must have forgotten. Daniel mentioned he was craving it, and well, a good wife should cater to her husband's needs, don't you think? I gripped the counter, fighting back a wave of nausea. Where is Daniel? Working late again, poor dear. Evelyn cooed. He's been so stressed lately, I wonder why. The implication in her tone was clear. Before I could respond, a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. Evelyn's eyes widened in mock concern. Oh my, are you all right? Perhaps you should lie down. I'll take care of everything here. I wanted to argue, to stand my ground, but another wave of pain hit me. Defeated, I retreated to the bedroom. Hours later, I woke to raised voices downstairs. Groggy and disoriented, I made my way to the top of the stairs. Daniel, you need to talk some sense into that wife of yours, Evelyn was saying. She's not taking proper care of herself or this house. It's affecting you, I can tell. Mom, please, Daniel sighed. Miranda's pregnant. She's doing her best. Her best, Evelyn scoffed. When I was pregnant with you, I never let it interfere with my duties. That's what's wrong with women today, always making excuses. I'd heard enough. Swallowing my anger, I descended the stairs. Both of them fell silent as I entered the room. Miranda, Daniel started, his tone cautious. How are you feeling? Like I'm carrying your child while being treated like a burden in my own home, I snapped. How do you think I'm feeling? Evelyn clicked her tongue. Now, dear, there's no need for dramatics. We're all just concerned about you. I turned to her, my patience finally snapping. Concerned? You've done nothing but undermine and criticize me since you moved in. And you, I rounded on Daniel, have let her do it. I'm your wife, Daniel. We're having a baby. When are you going to start acting like it? Daniel's face hardened. That's enough, Miranda. Mom's right, you're being dramatic. Maybe if you tried a little harder. Tried harder? I interrupted, my voice rising. I'm growing a human being while working full-time and trying to keep this house running. What exactly would you like me to try harder at? Well, Evelyn interjected, for starters, you could. No, I held up a hand, silencing her. I don't want to hear another word from you. This is between me and my husband. Daniel stood, his face flushed with anger. Don't speak to my mother that way. She's only trying to help. Help, I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this? Daniel, open your eyes. She's tearing us apart, and you're letting her. For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, but then Evelyn placed a hand on his arm, and his expression hardened once more. I think you need to calm down, he said coldly. Maybe you should go lie down. In that moment, something inside me broke. I looked at the man I had married, the father of my unborn child, and saw a stranger. You're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. I do need to lie down, but not here. I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring their calls behind me. As I climbed the stairs, my mind was made up. I couldn't stay in this house another night. It was time to take care of myself and my baby, even if it meant doing it alone. I stood in our bedroom, my hands shaking as I packed my suitcase. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, but I knew I had no choice. For the sake of my unborn child and my own sanity, I had to leave. As I zipped up the suitcase, the door creaked open. Daniel stood there, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. What are you doing? He demanded. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm leaving, Daniel. I can't stay here anymore. His eyes widened in disbelief. Leaving? But you're pregnant. You can't just leave. I can, and I will, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'm taking my maternity leave early and going to stay with my parents. Daniel's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous, Miranda. You're overreacting. Mom and I are just trying to help you. I laughed bitterly. Help me? Is that what you call this? Your mother has taken over our home, undermined me at every turn, and you've done nothing but enable her. She's just trying to prepare you for motherhood, Daniel argued. You should be grateful for her experience. Grateful? I spat. For what? For making me feel worthless in my own home? For stealing my personal documents? For turning my husband against me? Daniel's face paled. What are you talking about? Mom would never. Open your eyes, Daniel, I shouted, my frustration finally boiling over. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? And you're letting her destroy our marriage. Just then, Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. What's all this shouting about? It can't be good for the baby. I turned to her, my anger reaching new heights. Don't you dare pretend to care about this baby. You've done nothing but stress me out since you moved in. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. I've only been trying to help. If you can't appreciate that, maybe you're not ready to be a mother. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, my hand instinctively moving to protect my belly. Daniel stepped between us. Mom, that's enough. Miranda, you need to calm down. This stress isn't good for the baby. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man I married, the one who promised to stand by me through thick and thin, was gone. In his place stood a mama's boy who couldn't see past his mother's manipulations. I am calm, I said, my voice steady, and I'm leaving. I won't subject myself or my child to this toxic environment any longer. I grabbed my suitcase and pushed past them, heading for the stairs. Behind me I could hear Evelyn's voice dripping with false concern. Daniel, you can't let her leave. What will people think? A pregnant woman abandoning her home and husband. I whirled around, fury coursing through me. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm protecting myself and my child from you both. Daniel's face hardened. If you walk out that door, Miranda, don't expect to come back. His words hung in the air, a final ultimatum. I looked at him, searching for any sign of the man I fell in love with, but all I saw was Evelyn's puppet, dancing to her tune. Goodbye, Daniel, I said softly. I hope one day you'll see the truth. With that, I turned and walked out the front door. As I loaded my suitcase into the car, I could hear Evelyn's voice drifting from an open window. Let her go, Daniel. She'll come crawling back when she realizes she can't do this alone. I slammed the car door shut, my resolve strengthening. I'd show them both just how wrong they were. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. My hand rested on my belly, and I whispered a promise to my unborn child. It's just you and me now, little one, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. The contractions hit me like a freight train, jolting me awake in the middle of the night. I gasped, clutching my swollen belly as pain radiated through my body. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and anticipating for months had finally arrived. Mom, I called out, my voice strained. Dad, it's time. My parents burst into the guest room, their faces a mixture of excitement and concern. As another contraction gripped me, I couldn't help but think of Daniel. He should be here, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. But he wasn't, and that absence felt like a physical ache. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and anxiety. Between contractions, I fumbled with my phone, staring at Daniel's number. Should I call him? Did he even deserve to know? My finger hovered over the call button, but another wave of pain made the decision for me. Hours passed in a haze of agony and determination. My mother's steady presence beside me was a comfort, but it wasn't enough to fill the void left by Daniel's absence. As the final pushes approached, I felt a surge of anger and resolve. I would do this on my own. I didn't need him or his overbearing mother. With one last earth-shattering push, my baby entered the world. The sound of her first cry filled the room, and suddenly, nothing else mattered. It's a girl, the doctor announced, placing my daughter on my chest. I looked down at her tiny, perfect face, tears streaming down my cheeks. Hello, Lily, I whispered, the name I'd chosen months ago finally belonging to this beautiful, real person. As I held Lily, marveling at her tiny fingers and button nose, a nurse approached with a clipboard. Miss Thompson, we need some information for the birth certificate. Father's name? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I hesitated, my mind racing. Did Daniel deserve to be on the birth certificate? After everything that had happened, did he have the right to call himself Lily's father? Before I could answer, there was a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices echoed through the door, and my heart dropped as I recognized one of them. I demand to see my daughter-in-law and grandchild. Evelyn's shrill voice carried into the room. Ma'am, please calm down. Only immediate family is allowed at this time. A nurse tried to reason with her. I am immediate family, Evelyn screeched. The door burst open, and there stood Evelyn, her face red with fury. Behind her, looking sheepish and conflicted, was Daniel. I instinctively tightened my hold on Lily, my body tensing. What are you doing here? I demanded, my voice hoarse from hours of labor. Evelyn marched into the room, her eyes fixed on the bundle in my arms. We're here to see our granddaughter, of course. Daniel, look at her. She has your nose. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of his daughter. Miranda, I'm sorry. I should have been here. You're right, you should have, I said, my voice cold. But you weren't. You chose your mother over your wife and child. Evelyn scoffed. Don't be so dramatic, Miranda. We're here now, and that's what matters. Now let me hold my granddaughter. She reached for Lily, and something inside me snapped. Don't you dare touch her, I hissed, pulling Lily closer. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Daniel looked between me and his mother, clearly torn. Miranda, please, he pleaded. We just want to be a part of her life. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man I once loved. But I also saw the man who had let his mother come between us, who had chosen her over me time and time again. I think you both need to leave, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Now. Evelyn's face contorted with rage. You can't keep us from her. We have rights. As she lunged forward, my mother stepped between us, her voice sharp. That's enough. Get out, both of you, before I call security. As they were ushered out of the room, I looked down at Lily, peacefully oblivious to the drama surrounding her birth. In that moment, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. Nurse, I called out, my voice firm. For the birth certificate, no father listed. 3 months after Lily's birth, I stood on the doorstep of what used to be my home, my heart pounding. Lily was nestled against my chest in her carrier, blissfully unaware of the storm we were about to enter. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Daniel opened the door, his eyes widening at the sight of us. Miranda, you're back. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. As we stepped inside, the familiar scent of Evelyn's perfume assaulted my senses. The house looked different, colder somehow. Evelyn emerged from the kitchen, her face a mask of false concern. Oh, Miranda dear, you're looking well, she said, her eyes darting to Lily. And this must be our little angel. I instinctively tightened my hold on Lily. She's my daughter, Evelyn, not yours. Daniel cleared his throat. Let's sit down and talk, shall we? As we settled in the living room, I couldn't help but notice how out of place I felt in what was once my own home. Daniel sat across from me, while Evelyn hovered nearby, her eyes never leaving Lily. I've come to collect my things, I said, cutting straight to the chase, and to discuss our separation. Daniel's face fell. Miranda, please. Can't we work this out, for Lily's sake? Before I could respond, Evelyn interjected. Now, Miranda, let's not be hasty. Family is everything, after all. And little Lily needs her father. I felt my anger rising. Lily has been doing just fine without a father who chose his mother over his wife and child. Daniel flinched at my words. That's not fair, Miranda. I've been trying to reach out. Trying? I scoffed. A few text messages asking to see Lily doesn't count as trying, Daniel. Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. Now listen here, young lady. You can't keep that child from us. We have rights. Rights? I interrupted, my voice rising. What about my rights? My right to feel safe and respected in my own home? My right to raise my daughter without your constant interference? As if sensing the tension, Lily began to fuss. I stood up to soothe her, and that's when I saw it, my missing bank book peeking out from under a stack of papers on the side table. My blood ran cold. What is that doing here? Daniel followed my gaze, his face paling. "Miranda, I can explain." But I was already moving, snatching up the bank book. As I flipped through it, my worst fears were confirmed. Thousands of dollars, withdrawn without my knowledge or consent. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Evelyn stepped forward, her face a picture of innocence. "Now, Miranda, don't jump to conclusions. We were just safeguarding your money." "Safeguarding," I exploded. "You stole from me. Both of you." Daniel stood, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Miranda, please, we can explain everything. We were just trying to—" "To what, Daniel?" I spat. "To control me? To keep me dependent on you?" Evelyn's facade finally cracked. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough," a new voice boomed from the doorway. We all turned to see Douglas, Daniel's father, standing there, his face a mask of fury. "Dad?" Daniel said, shocked. "What are you doing here?" Douglas strode into the room, his eyes blazing. "I came to see my granddaughter, but it seems I've walked into a crime scene instead." He turned to me, his voice softening. "Miranda, I am so sorry. I had no idea things had gotten this bad." As Douglas's words hung in the air, I felt a strange mix of vindication and despair. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? I looked at Daniel, the man I once loved, now a stranger to me. At Evelyn, her mask of benevolence finally shattered. And at Douglas, an unexpected ally in this mess. With Lily clutched tightly to my chest, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. "I'm calling the police," I said, my voice steady and resolved. "This ends now." The room fell silent as I dialed 911, my hands shaking but my voice steady. Lily, sensing the tension, began to whimper. I bounced her gently, my eyes never leaving Daniel and Evelyn. "Miranda, please," Daniel pleaded, his face ashen. "We can work this out." But it was too late. Years of manipulation, gaslighting, and theft had led to this moment. As I reported the crime to the dispatcher, I watched the reality of the situation dawn on Daniel's face. The police arrived within minutes, their presence filling our once shared home. As they questioned us, the full extent of Evelyn's deceit came to light. Not only had she stolen my bank book and ID, but she had been systematically draining our accounts for months. Daniel's shock seemed genuine, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. He had chosen his mother over me, over our family, time and time again. As the officers led Evelyn away in handcuffs, she turned to Daniel, her face a mask of desperation. "Daniel, darling, you can't let them do this to your mother." I watched, holding my breath, as Daniel stood frozen, torn between the woman who raised him and the family he had helped create. In that moment, I saw the boy he once was, desperate for his mother's approval, and the man he had failed to become. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, turning away from her. Evelyn's shrieks echoed through the house as she was escorted out, leaving an eerie silence in her wake. Douglas stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Miranda, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for all of this. I should have seen what was happening, should have stopped it." I nodded, grateful for his support, but too emotionally drained to speak. As the chaos subsided, I found myself alone with Daniel in what was once our bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "I've ruined everything, haven't I?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a strange mix of pity and resolve. "Yes, Daniel, you have. But not just today. This has been happening for years." He raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I was protecting our family." "No," I said firmly. "You were protecting your mother, at the expense of your wife and child. And now it's time for me to protect Lily and myself." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say next. "I want a divorce, Daniel, and full custody of Lily." His shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue. "I understand," he said softly. I'll give you whatever you need." As I packed the last of my things, Douglas approached me again. "Miranda, I know I have no right to ask this, but please don't cut us out of Lily's life entirely. She deserves to know her family, flaws and all." I looked at this man, who had remained silent for so long, but had finally found his voice when it mattered most. "We'll see, Douglas. For now, I need time and space to heal." With Lily secured in her car seat and my belongings packed, I stood at the threshold of what was once my home. Daniel and Douglas watched as I prepared to leave, the weight of everything that had transpired hanging heavy in the air. "Goodbye," I said simply, closing the door on that chapter of my life. As I drove away, Lily cooed softly in the back seat. I caught her eye in the rearview mirror and felt a surge of love and determination. "It's just you and me now, little one," I said, my voice strong and clear, "but we're going to be okay. More than okay." The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt free. Free from manipulation, free from doubt, free to be the mother and woman I was meant to be. As the sun set on this tumultuous day, I realized that sometimes the happiest endings come from the courage to write your own story, and that's exactly what Lily and I were going to do. The glint of gold caught my eye as I reached for the crumpled receipt in Jack's jacket pocket. My heart raced as I smoothed out the paper, revealing a jaw-dropping sum for a piece of jewelry I'd never seen. Confusion turned to dread as I realized this wasn't a surprise gift for me. "Jack?" I called out, my voice wavering. "Can you come here for a minute?" My husband of 10 years sauntered into our bedroom, his easy smile fading as he saw the receipt in my trembling hand. "Laura, what are you doing going through my things?" I held up the damning evidence. "What's this? Because I know it's not for me." Jack's face hardened, and in that moment, I knew. The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. He didn't even try to lie. "It's for Molly," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm sorry you found out this way, but maybe it's for the best." "Molly?" I repeated, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. "Who the hell is Molly?" Jack sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "She's someone I've been seeing. For a while now." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of the dresser to steady myself. "How long is a while, Jack?" 6 months, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. I thought of all the late nights at the office, the sudden business trips. How could I have been so blind? Why? I choked out, tears threatening to spill over. Jack's gaze snapped to mine, a flash of anger in his eyes. "You really want to know why, Laura? Because Molly can give me what you can't." The words hit me like a slap. We'd been trying for a baby for years, with no success. Each negative test had been a knife to my heart, but I'd always believed we were in it together. How wrong I'd been. "That's not fair," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We've been through this together. We talked about adoption, about—" "It's not the same," Jack interrupted, his composure cracking. "I want my own child, Laura. A legacy, and Molly. She understands that." I felt sick. "So what? You're just going to throw away 10 years of marriage for some younger model who might be able to pop out a kid?" Jack's silence was answer enough. I sank onto the bed, my legs no longer able to support me. "Does your mother know?" A flicker of guilt crossed his face. "Helen, she's met Molly. She likes her." Of course she did. My mother-in-law had never approved of me, always hinting that Jack could do better. I guess she'd finally gotten her wish. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Laura, get out!" I stood, finding strength in my anger. "I can't even look at you right now. Just go." Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He grabbed his keys and wallet from the nightstand. At the doorway, he paused. "I am sorry, Laura. I never meant to hurt you." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Well, you did a piss-poor job of that, didn't you?" The front door slammed, and I was alone. The silence of the house pressed in on me, suffocating. I looked around the room we'd shared for so long, seeing it with new eyes. How many lies had been told here? How many nights had he lain beside me thinking of her? My gaze fell on our wedding photo on the dresser. With a cry of rage, I swept it to the floor, glass shattering. As I stared at the broken frame, a realization hit me. My life, the future I'd planned, lay in pieces at my feet, but as the initial shock began to fade, another emotion took its place. Determination. I might be down, but I was far from out. Jack and his precious Molly had no idea what was coming. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking as I dialed a number. "Dad? It's me. I need your help." I stared at the business card in my hand, my stomach churning. Discreet Investigations was embossed in gold lettering, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. My father's words echoed in my head. "Laura, honey, you need to know the whole truth." With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. A gruff voice answered. "Malone speaking." "Mr. Malone, this is Laura Jennings. I need your help." We arranged to meet at a cafe the next day. As I hung up, a wave of nausea hit me. Was I really going to spy on my own husband? The cafe was bustling when I arrived, but I spotted Malone immediately. He looked exactly like a private investigator should, weathered face, sharp eyes, and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Jennings," he nodded as I sat down, "tell me what you need." I took a deep breath. "I need evidence of my husband's affair. Concrete proof." Malone's expression didn't change. "Consider it done. I'll need some information." For the next hour, I laid bare the intimate details of my life, Jack's schedule, his habits, even the make and model of his car. With each revelation, I felt a piece of my heart crumble. "I'll be in touch within a week," Malone said as we parted. "Try to act normal in the meantime." Normal. What a joke. But I managed to go through the motions, even as Jack's lies became more apparent. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, how had I been so blind? 5 agonizing days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Malone. Evidence collected. Meeting tomorrow? Same place. That night, as Jack mumbled another excuse about working late, I felt a surge of anger. "Don't bother coming home," I snapped. "I'm sure Molly would love to have you." Jack froze, his face paling. "Laura, I held up a hand. "Save it. I know everything." The next morning, I met Malone with a mix of dread and determination. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "It's all there," he said gruffly. "Photos, video, even some audio recordings. You sure you want to see this?" I nodded, my throat tight. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and began to sift through its contents. The first photo hit me like a punch to the gut. Jack and a younger woman, Molly, I presumed, locked in an embrace outside a restaurant. Their intimacy was undeniable. More photos followed, stolen kisses in a park, holding hands as they entered a jewelry store. My eyes blurred with tears as I recognized the necklace Molly wore, the one from the receipt that had started this whole nightmare. But it was the audio recording that truly broke me. Jack's voice, low and intimate, filled my ears. "I love you, Molly. I've never felt this way before. Laura, she just doesn't understand me like you do." A sob escaped me, drawing concerned looks from nearby patrons. Malone discreetly pushed a box of tissues towards me. "There's more," he said quietly, "but I think you've seen enough." I nodded, unable to speak. As I gathered the damning evidence, a strange calm settled over me. The pain was still there, raw and bleeding, but alongside it was a steely resolve. "Thank you, Mr. Malone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You've given me exactly what I needed." As I left the cafe, clutching the envelope to my chest, I knew my next move. It was time to confront Jack, to force him to face the consequences of his actions. No more lies, no more excuses. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "We need to talk. I'm coming home early." Perfect timing. I typed a quick reply. "Yes, we do. I'll be waiting." The stage was set for a showdown. As I drove home, my mind raced with all the things I wanted to say, all the pain I wanted to inflict. But one thought rose above the rest. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms. Jack had underestimated me, but he was about to learn just how strong I could be. The front door clicked open, and I steeled myself for the confrontation. Jack walked in, his face a mask of practiced contrition. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. "Laura, we need to talk," he began, but I cut him off. "You're right, we do." I slapped the manila envelope on the coffee table. "Why don't you start by explaining these?" Jack's eyes widened as he leafed through the photos. His face cycled through shock, anger, and finally settled on a cold resignation. "So, you hired a private investigator." "I had to know the truth," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "though I guess I should thank you for making it so easy to catch you." He sank into the armchair, running a hand through his hair. "Laura, I never meant for it to go this far. Molly, she—" "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear about your precious Molly. What I want to know is why. Why throw away 10 years of marriage?" Jack's eyes met mine, and I was shocked by the anger I saw there. "You really want to know why? Because I want a family, Laura, a real family with children, and you can't give me that." His words hit me like a physical blow. "We talked about adoption, about other options." "It's not the same," Jack shouted, standing up. "I want my own flesh and blood, a legacy. Molly understands that. She wants the same things I do." I felt my own anger rising to match his. "So that's it? I'm just a defective baby-making machine to you?" "That's not fair," Jack said, but his eyes betrayed him. "You know what's not fair?" I spat. "Throwing away a decade of love and commitment because your wife can't get pregnant. That's not fair, Jack." He had the decency to look ashamed, but only for a moment. "I'm sorry, Laura, but I've made my decision. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it still felt like a knife to the heart. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. If that's what you want. Jack nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. I've already spoken to a lawyer. These are the initial divorce papers. I think you'll find the terms fair. I stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. How long have you been planning this? He hesitated. A few months. I wanted to make sure everything was in order before you ripped my life apart. I finished for him. Jack sighed. Laura, please, this doesn't have to be ugly. My mother, Helen, she's offered to mediate. Helen? I laughed bitterly. Let me guess, she's thrilled about all this. His silence was answer enough. Of course Helen would be overjoyed. She'd never approved of me, always hinting that Jack could do better. Now she had the daughter-in-law she'd always wanted. She likes Molly, Jack said quietly. They've become quite close. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest object, a framed photo of our wedding day, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered spectacularly, glass raining down on the carpet. Get out, I hissed. Get out of my house and take your damn papers with you. Jack looked startled by my outburst. Laura, be reasonable. Reasonable? I advanced on him, fury giving me strength. You want reasonable? How's this for reasonable? I'll see you in court, Jack, and I promise you I will fight you for every last penny. He backed away, hands raised in surrender. You don't want to do this, Laura. Think about... I said get out. I screamed, my voice raw with pain and rage. Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He placed the divorce papers on the table and walked to the door. With his hand on the knob, he turned back. I am sorry, Laura. For what it's worth, I did love you. As the door closed behind him, I collapsed to the floor, sobs racking my body. The life I'd known was over, shattered like the wedding photo on the floor. But as I cried, a small, determined voice in the back of my mind whispered, This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of my fight. The sound of a car door slamming jolted me awake. I blinked, disoriented, realizing I'd fallen asleep on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the mess from last night's confrontation. The shattered wedding photo lay accusingly on the floor. I stumbled to the window, my heart sinking as I watched Jack loading boxes into his car. This was really happening. He was leaving? Before I could think better of it, I yanked open the front door. So that's it? You're just going to sneak away while I'm sleeping? Jack froze, a box in his arms. I didn't want to make this any harder than it needs to be, Laura. Oh, how considerate of you, I spat, the words dripping with sarcasm. He sighed, setting the box down. Look, I've left the divorce papers on the kitchen table. My lawyer will be in touch about... Your lawyer, I interrupted. What happened to Helen mediating? A flicker of guilt crossed Jack's face. Mom thought it would be better to keep things professional. I laughed bitterly. Of course she did. Wouldn't want to risk me poisoning her precious son against her new favorite daughter-in-law. Laura, please, Jack said, his voice strained. Can we not do this? Do what, Jack? Acknowledge the fact that you're abandoning our marriage for a younger model who can give you the babies I couldn't? His face hardened. That's not fair. You know it's more complicated than that. Is it? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty simple. You found someone who could give you what you wanted, so you're throwing away 10 years like they meant nothing. Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I never meant to hurt you, Laura, but we want different things. It's better this way. Better for who? I demanded, tears stinging my eyes. For you? For Molly? For your mother? Because it sure as hell isn't better for me. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I'm sorry. I truly am, but this is how it has to be. As Jack turned back to his car, something inside me snapped. I stormed back into the house, grabbing the first thing I could find, a vase he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. Without thinking, I hurled it at his retreating back. It missed, shattering on the driveway instead. Jack whirled around, shock written across his face. Jesus, Laura! What the hell? Get out! I screamed, my voice raw with pain and fury. Get out, and don't you dare come back! Neighbors were starting to peek out their windows, drawn by the commotion. I didn't care. Let them see. Let them all see what Jack had reduced me to. He raised his hands in surrender, backing towards his car. I'm going. Just take care of yourself, Laura. I watched, trembling with rage and grief, as Jack got into his car and drove away. The finality of it hit me like a physical blow. He was gone. Really, truly gone. Stumbling back inside, I collapsed onto the couch, sobs racking my body. How had my life fallen apart so completely? Just days ago, I thought I had it all, a loving husband, a successful career, a beautiful home. Now, it was all ashes. As the tears subsided, leaving me feeling hollow and drained, my gaze fell on the divorce papers on the kitchen table. They seemed to mock me, a stark reminder of my new reality. With shaking hands, I reached for them. I had to face this head-on. No more crying, no more throwing things. It was time to be strong, to fight for myself. I picked up my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I needed. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Dad?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need your help. Do you know any good divorce lawyers?" As I listened to my father's concerned response, a steely resolve settled over me. Jack thought he could just walk away, that I'd roll over and accept whatever scraps he deigned to throw my way. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of my fight. The waiting room of Dr. Patel's office felt suffocating. I'd been here countless times before, each visit a reminder of my failure to conceive. Now, 2 weeks after Jack's departure, I sat here again, but for an entirely different reason. "Laura Jennings?" the nurse called, her voice jarring me from my thoughts. I followed her to the examination room, my stomach churning with more than just nausea. Dr. Patel entered moments later, her kind face creased with concern. "Laura, how are you feeling?" she asked, glancing at my chart. "Terrible," I admitted. "I've been sick for days. I thought it was stress from everything, but it's not getting better." Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. "I see. Well, let's run some tests and see what's going on." As she drew blood and ordered other tests, my mind raced. Could it be? No, it was impossible. After years of trying, of heartbreak and disappointment, there was no way. An hour later, Dr. Patel returned, her expression unreadable. "Laura, I have your results." I braced myself, expecting the worst. "What is it? Is something wrong?" She took a deep breath. "Laura, you're pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. What? Pregnant?" Dr. Patel repeated, a smile breaking across her face. "About 6 weeks along." 6 weeks. My mind reeled, doing the math. It must have happened right before Jack left, during one of our last attempts to salvage our marriage. "But how?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "We tried for so long." Dr. Patel squeezed my hand. "Sometimes, Laura, these things happen when we least expect them. Your body was under less stress, perhaps." Her voice faded into background noise as the reality sank in. I was pregnant, with Jack's child, the child he'd left me for not being able to provide. "Laura?" Dr. Patel's voice cut through my thoughts. "Are you all right?" I nodded, unable to speak. She continued, outlining next steps, scheduling follow-up appointments, but my mind was elsewhere, grappling with the enormity of this revelation. As I left the clinic, my phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Lawyer wants to meet next week to finalize divorce terms. Let me know if that works for you." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. Oh, how the tables had turned. I typed back a quick "fine" before calling the one person I knew I could trust. "Mom," I said when she answered, "I need you and Dad to come over. Now." An hour later, I sat across from my parents in my living room, clutching a mug of tea like a lifeline. "Sweetheart," my mother said gently, "what's going on? You're scaring us." I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father's voice, gruff with emotion. "Does Jack know?" I shook my head. "No one knows except you two. I just found out today." "Oh, Laura," my mother breathed, moving to sit beside me. "What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? Tell Jack and risk him coming back out of obligation? Keep it a secret and raise this child alone? The possibilities swirled in my mind, each more daunting than the last. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice breaking. I don't know." My father leaned forward, his eyes fierce with protective love. "Whatever you decide, we're here for you, all the way." As my parents enveloped me in a hug, I felt a surge of strength. This child, this miracle I'd longed for, was now my responsibility, my chance at the family I'd always wanted. In that moment, I made my decision. I would keep this baby, with or without Jack. I would fight for my child, for our future, with everything I had. I'm keeping the baby, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks, and I'm going to need a better lawyer. My parents exchanged a look of determination. We'll call cousin Sarah. My father said, she's the best family lawyer in the state. As they started making plans, I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. To this tiny life inside me, I made a silent promise. I will protect you, love you, and give you the best life possible, no matter what. The road ahead would be hard, but I was ready. This was the dawn of my new life, and I intended to face it head-on. The conference room felt like a battlefield. On one side sat Jack and his lawyer, their faces impassive. On the other, I sat with Sarah, my cousin and now fierce legal advocate. My hand rested protectively over my slightly swollen belly, hidden beneath a loose blouse. Let's begin, Sarah said, her voice crisp. We're here to finalize the divorce terms. Jack's lawyer nodded, sliding a document across the table. We believe these terms are more than fair, considering the circumstances. I scanned the paper, my blood boiling. Jack was offering a pittance in alimony, claiming most of our shared assets, and even trying to keep the house we'd bought together. This is ridiculous, I spat. You're trying to leave me with nothing. Jack finally met my eyes. Laura, be reasonable. You know I was the primary breadwinner. Reasonable? I laughed bitterly. Like you were reasonable when you threw away our marriage for a younger woman? His lawyer intervened. Let's keep emotions out of this. The facts are clear. The facts, I interrupted. Here's a fact for you. I'm pregnant. The room fell silent. Jack's face drained of color. What? That's impossible. We tried for years. Well, it happened, I said, my voice steady. Right before you left, so your fair terms, they need some serious adjustment. Jack's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. I could see the panic in Jack's eyes. This changed everything. We'll need to reassess, his lawyer said finally, in light of this development. Sarah nodded, a predatory gleam in her eye. We thought you might. Now let's talk about real fairness. The next hour was a blur of negotiations, child support, custody arrangements, division of assets. Everything was on the table. Jack seemed shell-shocked, barely participating, as his lawyer fought for every inch. Finally, we reached an agreement. I would keep the house, receive substantial alimony and child support, and have primary custody. Jack would have visitation rights, but limited ones. As we prepared to sign, Jack spoke up. Wait, I want to be part of this child's life. I want joint custody. I felt a surge of rage. Now you want to be a father after leaving me because I couldn't give you children? That was different, he protested. I didn't know. Exactly, I cut him off. You didn't know, and you didn't care. You walked away. You don't get to waltz back in now that it's convenient. Jack's face hardened. I have rights. This is my child, too. Your rights, I laughed humorlessly. What about my rights when you were sleeping with Molly? When you let your mother treat me like dirt? Where the mention of Helen seemed to deflate Jack. Laura, please, we can work this out. I shook my head. No, Jack, we can't. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I turned to Sarah. Add a clause. Neither Jack nor Helen can contact the child without my express permission. Jack's lawyer started to protest, but Sarah was already drafting the addition. It's within her rights, she said firmly, given the circumstances of the separation. As Jack signed the papers, his hand shaking slightly, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. I was free. Outside the office, Jack caught up to me. Laura, wait. Can't we talk about this? I turned to face him, one hand on my belly. There's nothing left to say, Jack. You wanted a family? Well, congratulations. You're going to be a father, but you lost the right to be a husband and partner when you walked out that door. His face crumpled. I made a mistake. I see that now. Please give me another chance. For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the night spent crying myself to sleep. No, I said firmly. This is my chance now. My chance at the family I always wanted, without you. As I walked away, leaving Jack standing alone on the sidewalk, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. This wasn't how I'd imagined starting a family, but it was my reality now, and I was determined to make the best of it. I placed a protective hand on my stomach. It's just you and me now, little one, I whispered, and we're going to be just fine. The shrill cry of my son Ethan pierced through the peaceful Saturday morning. I rushed to his room, my heart racing. As I scooped him into my arms, a commotion outside caught my attention. Through the window, I saw a familiar car pulling into my driveway. My blood ran cold. Helen. Shh, it's okay, baby, I murmured to Ethan, even as panic rose in my throat. What was she doing here? The doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. Laura, I know you're in there. Open up. I clutched Ethan tighter, my mind racing. 2 years of peace, of building a life for just the two of us. And now this. Laura. Helen's voice grew more shrill. I have a right to see my grandson. No, you don't, I whispered, but my voice shook. The divorce agreement was clear. Neither Jack nor Helen could contact us without my permission. The knocking turned to pounding. If you don't open this door, I'm calling the police. A hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. Go ahead. I called out, finding my voice. I'm sure they'd love to hear how you're violating a court order. There was a moment of silence, then Helen's voice, dripping with venom. You can't keep him from us forever, Laura. He's Jack's son, too. I felt a surge of protective rage. He stopped being Jack's son the moment he walked out on us. You bitch! Helen screamed. I heard a crash. She must have thrown something at the door. Ethan began to wail again, frightened by the noise. I bounced him gently, trying to calm him even as my own heart raced. It's okay, sweetie, I soothed. Grandma's just leaving. But Helen wasn't leaving. I could hear her on the phone, her voice rising in pitch. Yes, officer. I'm trying to see my grandson, and his mother is refusing to let me in. It's 1852 Maple Street. Please hurry. My hands shook as I reached for my own phone. I dialed Sarah's number, praying she'd pick up on a Saturday. Laura? Sarah answered, sounding concerned. What's wrong? Helen's here, I said, my voice trembling. She's demanding to see Ethan. She's called the police. Stay calm, Sarah said, her lawyer voice kicking in. Don't open the door. I'm on my way. If the police arrive before me, show them the court order. It's in the blue folder in your study, remember? I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. Okay, thank you, Sarah. As I hung up, I heard sirens in the distance. This was really happening. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. I carried Ethan downstairs, retrieving the blue folder from my study. Through the window, I could see a police car pulling up. Helen was gesticulating wildly, pointing at the house. The officer approached my door, knocking firmly. Ma'am? This is Officer Rodriguez. Can you please open the door? With shaking hands, I unlocked the door, Ethan on my hip, and the folder clutched to my chest. Officer, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I have a court order here prohibiting this woman from contacting me or my son without my express permission. I handed him the document. As he read it, Helen pushed forward, her face contorted with rage. That's my grandson, she shrieked. You can't keep him from me. The officer held up a hand, silencing her. Ma'am, this order is clear. You're in violation by being here. Helen's face crumpled. But he's family. Laura, please, just let me see him. For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the nights spent crying while pregnant and alone. No, I said firmly. You lost that right when you supported Jack abandoning us. Officer, I want to press charges for harassment. Helen's wail of anguish was cut off by Sarah's arrival. As my cousin-turned-lawyer took charge of the situation, I retreated inside with Ethan, my legs finally giving out as I sank onto the couch. I hugged my son close, tears streaming down my face. We'd weathered this storm, but at what cost? And how many more battles lay ahead? As I heard Helen being led away, still protesting, I made a silent vow. No matter what it took, I would protect Ethan. From Helen, from Jack, from anyone who threatened our peace. We'd come too far to let anyone tear us apart now. The cafe bustled with the morning rush, but I barely noticed as I stared at the text message on my phone. It was from Sarah, my lawyer and cousin. Jack's filing for increased visitation. Hearing set for next month. Call me ASAP. My hands shook as I set the phone down. After 3 years of relative peace, Jack was making a move. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Mommy, can I have more juice? Ethan's voice cut through my panic. I looked at my son, his face smeared with syrup from his pancakes, and felt a surge of protective love. Of course, sweetie, I said, forcing a smile. As I poured his juice, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Laura? A woman's voice, hesitant and familiar. It's Molly. I nearly dropped the phone. Molly? What do you want? There was a pause, then a shaky breath. I thought you should know. Jack and I... We're getting divorced. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? Why? We've been trying to have a baby, Molly said, her voice thick with tears. But I can't. I can't conceive. Jack couldn't handle it. He left last week. A hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. The irony was almost too much to bear. Laura? Molly's voice was small. I'm so sorry. For everything. I never should have. Save it, I cut her off. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Just like I did. I hung up, my mind reeling. Jack leaving Molly for the same reason he'd left me. It felt like cosmic justice, but it brought me no joy. As I looked at Ethan, happily munching on his breakfast, a realization hit me. This was my chance. With Jack's life in shambles, I could push for full custody. No more visitation battles, no more fear of Helen's interference. I dialed Sarah's number. I just heard from Molly. Jack left her. I want to file for full custody. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible. Laura, are you sure? This could get ugly. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. It's time to end this, once and for all. The next month was a whirlwind of legal preparations and sleepless nights. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw Jack for the first time in years. He looked haggard, defeated. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered everything he'd put me through, and my resolve hardened. The judge looked between us, her expression stern. Mr. Jennings, you're seeking increased visitation. Mrs. Jennings, you're countering with a request for full custody. Let's hear your arguments. Jack's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a reformed man who'd made mistakes but deserved a second chance. When it was our turn, Sarah laid out our case methodically. Jack's abandonment, his pattern of leaving when things got tough, the stability I'd provided for Ethan. As the judge deliberated, Jack approached me. Laura, please, he whispered. Don't take my son away from me. I've lost everything else. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw the man I'd once loved, the father of my child. But I also saw the man who'd broken my heart, who'd walked away when things got hard. You lost him the day you walked out on us, I said, my voice low but firm. I'm just making it official. The judge's decision was swift and final. Full custody granted to me, with Jack allowed supervised visitation twice a month. As she read out the terms, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. We were free. Outside the courtroom, I hugged Sarah tightly. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. She squeezed me back. You did this, Laura. You fought for yourself and for Ethan. I'm so proud of you. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. No more looking over my shoulder, no more fear of Jack or Helen swooping in to disrupt our lives. I picked up Ethan from my parents' house, hugging him close. How about we go for ice cream, buddy? I suggested. His face lit up. Really? Can I have 2 scoops? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. You can have as many scoops as you want. We're celebrating. As we sat in the ice cream parlor, Ethan happily devouring his sundae, I looked at my son and felt a surge of love and pride. We'd been through so much, but we'd come out stronger. This was our new beginning, our chance at the family I'd always dreamed of. It wasn't the path I'd expected, but sitting here with my son, I knew without a doubt this was exactly where I was meant to be.